Welcome to the Project with Sam and Lewis, the podcast where we look at projects throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam,
And I'm Lewis.
and in today's episode, we are going to be looking at my science project from 1985.
Certainly are.
But before that, how are you today, Lewis?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, all right. I had a realization as I was coming over here this morning
Yeah.
that that journey last week was when I was really hungover and not enjoying myself.
Yes.
And it kind of made me think, oh god, it's so great not to be
Yeah,
hungover.
had a bit of a flashback, deja vu.
Yeah, and I was just like, man.
like a grateful
Yeah.
deja vu.
Lesson is don't drink, kids.
Yeah, that is definitely something to take on board. Although hopefully that episode, wasn't
Yeah, I
too
think it was fine. Once we got
affected by
started-
it. I think we did.
Once
I think
we got started, it was fine.
I think you wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't mentioned it at the start. So
Yeah.
let's hope anyway.
But no, I'm all good. Really,
yeah, good.
I fully fit this.
Good.
This time
Yeah, I was
around.
listening back to an older episode, and you were
Constantly in
you
pain.
had constantly in pain. So yeah, it's good to hear that you are not suffering as much
And
today.
yeah, it seems like when I had surgery a month ago, that's nearly fully recovered now. So it means I can actually
Yes.
start exercising or something in the next week or so.
Nice.
That which will be great because I haven't been able to exercise for like 2 months, and I'm definitely feeling it in my gut.
Well, that's good. Before we get on to our main topic, have you got any project news for
I
us?
certainly do.
And do you want to explain the segment as well?
So every week I simply Google project and look through the news and pick out a couple of articles that kind of stand out. A lot of them have been environmental in the past.
Yeah.
We haven't got any direct links. Actually, one of them's kind of half environmental.
Okay.
But first of all, we've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Project Rock drops new football gear.
Wow, okay. Oh, I think I might have heard about this. Did he buy a football or he bought like the XFM or something like that?
He's
XFM?
basically started an American football
league. kind of thing.
no, like clothing stuff, like shoes
Right,
and stuff that's
okay.
being released under Under Armour, the
Oh
brand.
yeah.
Called Project Rock.
Cool.
So I think it's like he spends a lot of time talking about like his failures because obviously he played football at university.
Yes, yeah.
Was in the NFL draft in '94, but wasn't picked.
I see. Yes, that
so
does
he
ring
kind
a
of
bell.
had his
Yes.
dreams thrown away.
But then got into wrestling and became one
And
of the
became-
biggest movie stars in the
And
world.
probably
so-
earned more money than he ever would have.
Yeah,
playing
I'm
football.
sure. Yeah.
But he said because of my failure, my NFL dreams never came true.
Wow.
Because of failure, I'm the hardest worker in the room, and because of failure, I've learned that hard work will always begin and end with me. So yeah, he's
an intense guy from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the opening thing for Project Rock is the Project Rock spotlights,
right. Okay.
which are low cut football cleats, as they describe
Ooh,
them. In
low
America.
cut in
Yeah, I've got a picture. They look kind of weird, to be honest. Like it's
Yeah.
some kind of weird, like almost graffiti-esque.
Yeah, I mean
design.
very like something you'd see in like a Latin or South American like big wall of graffiti almost.
Yeah, that
like
sort of thing.
Colombian graffiti.
Um,
Maybe I'm thinking of very specific exampms, but yeah. Interesting design. Maybe not what you'd imagine for
no, but he's clearly
football
like obviously he's got a
boots.
big. Oh, there's more. There's gonna be tops, t-shirts, shorts, socks, hoodies.
Yeah.
Like a whole set of different sets of clothes under this brand. So I mean, it makes sense. Like he's a big enough brand at this point that he can put out a clothing brand and be
Right.
successful.
So he is. So what I thought at the start, not to derail too much,
Yeah.
but he is, or at least was set to buy the American Football League. So it's not the NFL. I think it's like the
One of the
second one
lower
down,
ones,
yeah,
yeah.
or maybe one of the lower ones. He was set to buy it last year because it
Jesus.
wasn't doing very well. I think maybe at
Yeah.
promo and advertising, compared to the NFL.
With how it works in America, like all the attention is either in the NFL or like college football.
Yeah. So I imagine that this might be part of that. Maybe it's going to be promoting that. If he
Yeah.
still has purchased it, I just did a quick Google then, didn't do any
So,
research. But
I
no,
mean,
that's interesting.
He is
yeah.
like he's one of the richest actors in the
yeah.
world. At this
His
point,
name
isn't he?
being on something is a seal of approval
Yeah.
for sure. Maybe not quality, but
And I guess part of it is that like he's kind of doing that thing like now he's got loads of money he can afford to going back to like his true love of American football and
yeah.
doing stuff like that. So yeah, fair play. I
For
doubt
him,
I
yeah.
doubt I'll be a follow that because
No,
I'm not an American football fan. But
no.
fair play to him.
I mean, it could always become more entertaining somehow, but I highly doubt it from what I've seen
I
of
could
American
spend
football.
a
No
long
offense
time.
to anybody who's a
Yeah.
big fan of American football, but it's not part of our culture here in any way.
Yeah,
And it's a bit of I wouldn't say impenetrable sport, but it's quite different to sports that
yeah,
are
like we
popular
watched the
around
Super
here.
Bowl several
We
years ago,
did
didn't
when we were at
But
university.
I just
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
get. And my brothers recently got really into it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it does happen. There are
Yeah,
American football
it's just
teams at universities and stuff,
it's
aren't
just
there?
the culture around it is quite hard to get into. Like the whole, I mean, the go to thing is the whole
Yeah,
stop
start.
and,
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah,
and like
yeah.
all the ads and stuff. And it's just quite a limiter.
It's a bit jarring when you're used to longer plays and things like
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
isn't it?
like football, what the Americans will call soccer here. We
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
get like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
without
absolutely.
stopping.
Yeah,
But yeah, anyway, good for him. The other
Cool.
bit of news I've got
yep.
Indonesia's controversial Jurassic Park project
Whoa.
going ahead in Komodo National Park.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
one of the biggest tourism spots in Indonesia
Yeah,
is
of course.
an island of Komodo National Park where they've got, I think it's like 50 Komodo dragons or something.
Yeah. I think I've heard of it.
And basically they're doing a load of construction on it to kind of make it better for tourists and stuff. But it's been quite controversial because UNESCO, the people who do the World Heritage site, have kind of said that it's actually could be quite damaging in the short term for the habitats.
Right. What extra tourism and things like that?
No, like the construction.
What's
work.
the construction going to be then? Do you know?
I
Is
couldn't find it specific. I think
is it making it like a park? I imagine, like more of
Yeah.
an amusement park thing. Yeah.
and I think kind of making it a lot. There's probably parts of it that are run down and things.
Mm.
But there's also, another concern is illegal fishing around the area.
Right. Okay.
So what the two things that UNESCO have pointed out is the illegal fishing and the risk to the Komodo dragon's natural habitat.
Yeah.
So even though they're kind of doing it up, it seems like they're doing it up for tourists at the detriment to the Komodo dragons.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it's not. So it's using them as the draw for tourism, and not necessarily taking into account what's best for the. What's
which
best
considering there's only like I think I clicked on another article that said there was 41 actually to be precise.
Right. Okay.
It seems like it's a bit worrying that it's kind
Yeah. I mean, clearly it means that maybe there's a lack of tourism in or a tourism sector in that area there. But yeah, obviously you have to take into account like conservational needs and stuff like that, because that is
apparently there's 3,000 Komodo
important.
dragons in Indonesia, but in this specific
right.
park,
Okay.
not that many.
Okay. Right. Okay.
And
So it's not exactly like it's. So I would have imagined there was more than 41 around.
Yeah.
'Cause they're not like a particular. I don't think they're a particularly endangered species, but maybe
No.
4,000. Did you say
the 3,000
3,000
in Indonesia.
in Indonesia? Okay, yeah.
And Indonesia come out and said like, oh, it won't cause any problems with the Komodo dragons, but it does seem to be a concern.
Yeah, there's some controversy.
So hopefully that is all smoothed out.
Yeah.
And there's a related content here. We're completely off topic, not to a project, but a Komodo dragon with no male partner gave birth to 3 hatchlings.
Ooh.
It's the classic
Was it
life will find a way.
I was going to go the other way, immaculate conception.
Oh no, I was going the Jurassic Park route.
Okay, yeah.
Life will find a way.
Yeah, 2 seat belts, whatever it is.
Yeah, classic. But yeah, so hopefully that's all smoothed out and Komodo dragons will live on.
As long as they don't get too big and populated. You don't want them taking over here.
Telling me you're scared of Komodo dragons?
I mean, they are quite scary, to be fair.
Yeah, I think
that whole thing about they've got such wealth of bacteria in their mouth. When they bite you, you not only die because of the infection, but also they can track you over long distances because they can smell it.
Oh,
have you heard of that?
No.
It sounds really scary. If you imagine if they were more developed, like some sort of predator from Predator, there's some sort of like, you know, you can imagine them with their infrared
they're
tracking
quite
you.
big as well. They're bigger than
They're
you
also
think
big.
They are.
They're like they got to be at least a meter long, maybe longer than that from
like,
head to tail.
Yeah, like 2 meters.
2 meters. They're pretty chunky. They're pretty much like a Godzilla kind of thing, aren't they? Really?
On 4 legs.
Yeah, like you can imagine Godzilla would have come from a Komodo dragon rather than like an iguana or whatever it may
like
be.
A T-Rex or
a T-Rex. Yeah. But yeah, cool. Interesting.
So moving on to my science project.
Yeah, main topic of the episode. So have you got you said there was quite a short Google summary, Lewis?
Yeah, compared to usual. I mean, it's a summary, but I mean, yeah, look, it says a teen, John Stockwell, and his girlfriend, Danielle von Zernick, raid a military junkyard and find a time travel contraption from a UFO.
Yeah, I mean that's the first third, isn't it?
Like,
yeah, maybe the first half of the film. There's not really the most. I mean, it sets up the film, but there's most of the interesting stuff happens in the last third of the film.
Yeah, if you've got a very loose definition of interesting.
Yeah, but compared to the rest of the film, relatively speaking, yeah, I can already tell how Lewis feels about this film.
Oh yeah. I think it's a fair summary.
I'd say
it's more of like a trailer summary than a full description like we've had some others.
Speaking of trailer, the trailer that we watched just before recording was really weirdly paced, wasn't it?
Yeah, the first half of it was just clips, like no music, just clips.
Maybe very like light background music, but not like we're used to. I mean, it might be the original trailer from the 80s. But you also think American trailers from that period quite often have like a booming voiceover.
Yeah,
even the Back to the Future trailer, which will make the comparisons. With that at least the ones that I remember, that at least from maybe a bit later, when it was re-released or something, they've got like the iconic soundtrack. They've got someone saying, Marty McFly is going back in time.
Like Ghostbusters was a year before this.
Yeah,
again was kind of who are you going to call?
It's very like the film. I mean, we'll get onto budget in just a moment. I imagine it doesn't feel super cheap overall, I would say, but that trailer felt very cheap. Like one of the cast had put it together almost. But did you have any of the box office budgets numbers?
Yeah, I struggled to find the actual budget.
Right. Okay.
Because like they probably hid it, but like you said about Back to the Future, I feel like they kind of went that kind of thing, a cheaper kind of version.
Yeah,
Back to the Future had a budget of like 19 million. I just checked, so I would put this as probably like 8 or 9 million. I reckon the budget.
Yeah, it's about half of that probably.
Which makes the box office even worse because the box office was 4 million.
Yeah, I think I saw that somewhere. It didn't do particularly well, and a lot of that is because of things like Back to the Future, which came out like a month before.
Yeah, well, I saw when I was looking at it that as part of the marketing thing, they wanted to market it as a mix of Ghostbusters and Back to the Future.
Yes,
to the point in some countries it was released as Time Busters.
That's right. It was in Sweden, so I think that would have been, if you think about it, that would have been a little bit of a later release internationally because Back to the Future wouldn't have as much renown in that first month. You know what I mean? But it's definitely influenced.
And like I wrote down as the comparison, Ghostbusters made nearly 300 million, Back to the Future made over 400 million.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also I read that it was pulled from cinemas after like a week because it wasn't
performing, and I imagine it would have cost more to keep it going. Yeah, I mean, the influences are quite clear in certain bits. There's even special effects towards the end that are ripped almost straight out of Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah.
And obviously that they would have known part of that at least going into it. I know it would have taken a bit longer to do 80s effects, but having almost a year lead, they would have known that they were
especially in post-production stuff. They could watch Ghostbusters and they're
absolutely.
Like,
Back to the Future, on the other hand, there's you have to wonder how much they knew, because I know Back to the Future was in pre-script for a while. There's stories about producers trying to make changes to it, give it funny names and things like that. But it only came out a month before, so there's only so much that they could have done in the actual production.
I did watch on Netflix that Movies That Made Us. They had a Back to the Future episode, and they're saying like the original plot and stuff was completely different. There's so much they changed in that it wouldn't be surprising if somebody heard about this idea and kind of.
I mean, I imagine that's a lot of it, and
went with their own thing.
And also, it's I was gonna save it for the end, but with it was the fourth film produced by Touchstone Pictures, which is a division of Disney. So they'd released a couple of similar films in the year or so before. And Disney was actually offered Back to the Future originally. They were gonna produce and release it, distribute it, but they turned it down because they thought the plot with Marty and his mum was too like risque or perverted. So there's a real chance that they heard about this and thought this is our slightly more family friendly on brand version of it, and they wanted to compete, because that's exactly what production companies do, isn't it? Especially people like Disney. It's normally the other way around now. Someone else does a fake Disney version, but it's not unheard of that they'll hear about a Cinderella remake and they'll rush their one through to be released
like
the
they
year
did
before.
it with Jungle Book, didn't they? When you're gonna have
Andy Serkis's one was coming out, absolutely,
and they rushed through Jungle Book with Jon Favreau. Was it who did that?
That's right,
yeah. Whereas
they rushed through that, I mean, it's like it was like a technological marvel, wasn't it?
I
mean, I've never seen it, but I've seen the clips, and
I've seen both though. I think I'd prefer Mowgli.
I saw the Andy Serkis one, Mowgli. It's got a subtitle, hasn't it? It's quite dark. Isn't his little? He's got some sort of animal friend that gets like beheaded, and he goes into like a hunter's tent, and there's just like this head on like a stick.
That sounds like Andy Serkis.
It's quite traumatic,
behind the camera, if you will, in place of Robert Zemeckis, my science project has got Jonathan R. Butel.
Yes,
Butel.
He did something else last Starfighter or something. I think
he'd done a few like small 80s stuff.
Yeah, similar kind of.
The only notable credit I could find from him over the last 20 years was that he was a member of the additional crew on The Winter Soldier.
Oh, really?
So, like, not even like producer, director, or anything. He was just kind of there on set doing additional crew. I don't know what they do specifically.
Yes, it's The Last Starfighter. He was a writer on, which is this kind of a similar plot. It's a kid who gets swept up into like an intergalactic thing to do with video games and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't think I've seen it. I was getting confused with another film, but yeah, he's got a bit of a. At least in this period, he's got a But that's just it's kind of like falling down the ranks a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think maybe this kind of cost him his reputation.
Yes, I can imagine
he wrote
so.
And directed this, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he might have produced it as well, potentially.
Yeah, so that's always dangerous. Writing, directing, and producing.
Yeah, because there's always a danger that nobody keeps you in check if you're doing all the roles.
The classic example being George Lucas and the Star Wars prequels.
Yes.
But in terms of cast, the lead is played by John Stockwell.
Yes.
Who I don't really know him for anything, but he's in Top Gun.
Yes, he was in Top Gun. I haven't seen Top Gun, if at all. I haven't seen it for about 10, 15 years.
Same.
So the name that was on the IMDb, I didn't recognise. So he might be...
I think he's got a decent role in
I mean, it would make sense because it's not long after
a few years.
This. Is it late 80s?
Yeah. But I think he's like... So I Googled him in Top Gun, and there's lots of different pictures. And there was even one like... How to make John Stockwell's helmet in Top Gun.
Right,
so I think he's a fairly major
So he's
character.
like a third, fourth character.
There's Raphael Sabaj, who played the nerdy guy.
Sherman, yes.
Who's in Independence Day and Pearl Harbor as like kind of
he's also
scientist.
He's also in 5 episodes of Star Trek Voyager as Michael Jonas.
Oh, I'm sure if I Googled him, I'd probably...
and he's also in an episode of Avatar The Last Airbender as a voice, and he did a main character's voice in the 3 Mass Effect games.
Oh, there you
so
go.
he's gone into... He's very prolific in his own right, but it's not stuff that you'd recognise him from, I don't think.
I'd probably recognise
It's a lot of voice work and stuff now, I think.
Yeah.
But,
we've got one person the other two I did recognise other people I've got written down. It's Fisher Stevens, who plays the best friend.
Yes.
He's kind of a really over-the-top Brooklyn guy, who I really recognise. I Googled him.
Oh, yes.
He's in one episode of Friends where he's
Phoebe's
Phoebe's boyfriend, who's the psychiatrist who overanalyzes everyone, and they all hate him.
He's got a big beard.
He's got like long hair.
Oh no, I'm thinking
and like
of
a bit of a beard.
Yeah.
But he's a psychiatrist, and it's just like
I thought, yeah, I remember who you mean.
He's in a few episodes of Lost, which I've watched many times.
I skimmed through his thing. I didn't really 100%.
Interestingly, he was an executive producer on Tiger King.
Right. Okay.
Which seems random.
Yeah.
And then the biggest name.
Yeah.
Dennis
Hopper, who's been in so many films.
I mean, it's bizarre that he's kind of got a secondary role in this. He's Bob the teacher.
Yeah. Bob Roberts.
Yeah.
Don't call me Mr. Roberts.
Robert Roberts. But a year after this, he was being nominated for supporting actor at the Oscars, and it's like that's quite a year's difference.
Yeah. What was that for?
Whose years?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because he's like Apocalypse Now, True Romance,
lots of
Blue
stuff.
Velvet. Easy Rider, which comes up in a visual reference that we'll get to.
It does. But yeah, to go from like a secondary role in this to an Oscar nomination a year later.
It turns out, at least according to IMDb trivia, that he just got out of rehab when he acted in this film.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I don't know if maybe, I don't want to be judgmental. I don't know if maybe it was like do this to get back into work thing.
Yeah.
But I think, although his performance is
weird
to say the least, I thought he was really entertaining, and he's one of the more entertaining characters in the film, relatively speaking.
I'll give you that.
So I don't think it's something that he'd ever, I mean, he's passed away now, but I don't think it's something that he would ever have kind of put on his top films.
No, but like so,
I don't think anyone would have put on their top films, to be honest.
I don't know, some of these Fisher Stevens might, since he's done bit parts in TV roles.
Fisher Stevens.
But yeah, it seems like he might have just been a first one out of rehab and then go do actual films.
Yes, yeah.
But to finish off, did you look at the Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb?
I think I've probably seen them, but yeah.
Do you have a guess?
40%.
Rotten Tomatoes got 11%. By far our lowest rated film yet.
Wow, really?
Well, Dinosaur Project was like 29%.
Yeah, no, I remember.
11%.
I don't know if that's fair.
Well, we'll do our own ratings at the end.
I do think something that I should preface this with, and I don't know if it's the same for you, Lewis, but doing a bit of reading afterwards, there's a lot of films like Weird Science, Last Starfighter, which came out preceding this or just after, which people look back on much more fondly. And I haven't seen any of those films. And I think if I had, even now, if rewatching, I think the difference in quality would be much more apparent. But because I haven't watched a film like this for a long time, I think the novelty of
But you have seen Back to the Future.
I have. And there was, I mean, the first half was very boring, to be honest. I thought the second half was quite fun. But we'll get onto it as we move through the film.
So let's go into the film. It starts with the first of seemingly many Star Wars references, with the pan down from the stars down into the thing. And I wrote down Star Wars pan down, and then not thinking there's going to be loads of Star Wars references.
Yeah, there's at least two other ones I can think of. Yeah.
It's some people arriving at an army base.
Well, we hear the noises and they talk about a bogey is going down.
Yeah.
And you hear kind of a crash, and we don't really know what's happened at that point. There is a scrapped opening that they were going to use where you saw what was going on, and they had alien puppets.
Yeah, but I think they said the puppets were shit.
The puppets weren't worth using apparently, which I think makes sense. But instead, we just see this pan down from the sky, and then military all turning up to a base.
And there's basically a spaceship inside a hangar.
Yeah,
and I wrote down. It's like, I think it says 1957.
It's 1957. Yeah.
I wrote down there's an old man getting a tour.
Yes, did you notice President?
And not until the credits when it came up,
exactly the same.
Eisenhower, and I was like, oh my god, the old guy at the start was President Eisenhower.
President Eisenhower, yeah.
Because you see a poster of him
Which
later
I think
on,
is why there's the crack that he says about what could be worse than invading Europe is
yeah,
supposed to be.
I heard him say that, and I was like, okay,
It's like 1957. You're like, yeah, but
yeah,
but it's because
he was president. Yeah, and they're talking about the ship, and he goes, "Get rid of it."
I know, which is, and then they just start firing the small laser at it. Oh no, they
Yeah.
say first of all, so there's a big missing chunk from the, so it's a flying saucer,
Yeah,
partly
like
covered, is
a
it?
classic,
It's very, very
circular,
stereotypical,
big like alien spaceship.
and then there's a chunk that's maybe a meter long that's been taken out of it, and they say the eggheads took the engine. They want to do work on it as usual, and it's like, yeah, obviously that's the whole point of, like,
damn scientists wanted to do science.
It's like, why can't we just blow everything up? And anyway, they start firing a laser at it, and then we don't see it again, so we assume they took it apart.
Like, you
or
kind of
something,
see like the light shining from outside.
Yes, yeah,
and then it cuts. We're now in 1985.
Yes,
in like a lecture hall.
Yeah, well, I think we see something. Yeah, I think we see the characters coming in first, but yeah, we're in a lecture hall,
a science lecture,
science class.
They're talking about their class projects, and the teacher, Bob, played by Dennis Hopper, is asking students like what their science
and
project
he's like
is.
a cool teacher.
Don't call me Mr. Roberts kind of teacher.
He's always going, come on, man, to his kids, and he's supposed to be like an ex-hippie.
Yeah,
and he says like only the pigs call me Mr. Roberts or something like that.
He's constantly referring to the police as pigs.
Yeah, and there's some quite funny bits later on, and then then there's the whole discussion about science projects.
Yeah, and like a couple people have got boring science projects that
he
he
finds
finds
the
boring.
two nerd characters.
Yeah,
there's Ellie and Sherman.
Yeah,
who are like, they're both the losers of the class or whatever.
Yeah, typical 80s
They're friends
nerds.
because they're the only people that could that talk to each other.
And then our main character, Mike Harlan,
they sneak in. Mike in with Vinny, his friend.
Vinny, who's literally like the most over the top.
He is. I thought he was. Okay, there's a couple of things, obviously, but generally, I thought he was very, very, very funny, and I thought he was really good. I've written down so many of his lines. Did you find him really annoying?
I found it like literally from the start, like because like he's from like Brooklyn or something, and they're not in Brooklyn.
But he also uses so many different lingos, and the first thing I think he says, this is why I thought they were outside. I'm pretty sure he says something like "Ciao, babe" to his friend, and it's like, where is this guy? Like, there's no. I guess he's supposed to be Italian American, but I don't think the actor is Italian American.
No,
I think he's Jewish American, maybe from Brooklyn or New York. But yeah, it's very, and he's dressed like he's from Greece.
Yeah,
like this opening part. I mean, a lot of the characters.
He's got like a light blue shirt on that's got like such a low cut
with like a big kind of black. It's almost like it is like a 50s casual shirt kind of thing. And even Mike, who's his friend, he's almost like a John Travolta at the start, isn't he? Like,
but they're all like. All the characters are clearly from the 80s, and he's
from like
Greece, as you said.
Yeah, because he's got the slick back hair. He's very skinny, and he's got quite like a big head, and he's got almost like what looks like fake tan on. And you see him now, and he's not that tan.
No,
because he almost looks like he could be from like South Asia, maybe like Indian or Pakistani. So this is why I was confused about where he was supposed, where the character. I think it's just like fake tan is lathered on. Anyway, they sneak in while the nerd kids are giving their presentation.
And Bob, the teacher's like, Harlan, what's your project? And he's like, well, I've been working, haven't got anything, basically. And the bell goes, they all leave, but he holds Bob and Vinny, who's his mate, played by Fisher Stevens,
stays with him.
He holds them back. And he's like, it seems like he's got quite high expectations of Mike.
Yeah, and he seems like although he seems like a bit of a hard ass in that first bit, he's being quite down to earth. He's saying, and Mike's saying, he's doing too much work at the shop because he's like the John Travolta guy. Yeah. He's all into his cars. I think his dad might own a mechanics or something like that.
Yeah, seems like it. But yeah, he's like, oh, I'll just like build an engine. And Bob's like, you could do that in your sleep. Yeah. Like, I want something actual
original.
Proper.
He says like original, which is also quite a big asking for a high school science project.
Yeah, like it seems like he's got faith in him because he knows he can.
Yeah, he knows he's got like a mechanical mind.
Although like throughout the rest of the film, it doesn't seem like Mike is a very good scientist.
No,
he just knows cars.
But that's the thing. Even with the car thing, he figures out this gizmo, which we'll move on to fairly shortly.
Yeah.
But he only figures it out by just fumbling around, and he's doing a weird, when he's shining it in a very sensual way, shining this big thing up. But he doesn't ever, other than connecting it to jumper cables, which 2 other characters do in the film, he doesn't do anything really that shows.
No, like,
I was kept expecting him to attach it to his car, like a Back to the Future
after
thing.
This start, I kept thinking like, oh, he's gonna be good at science in some way.
Yes, but he's
cars.
He's like he's just the brave guy, basically.
Yeah,
that's all he is.
And then they leave, and Bob Roberts, the teacher, then starts puffing oxygen.
Yeah, he just gets like I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be oxygen or like nitrous or something. Yeah, but I guess it's like
it's like a
tank.
gas container.
And he's like, oh yeah.
And I was just like, oh Christ. And they go outside, and Mike sees his girlfriend Crystal.
Yes, that's it.
Who's not happy with him, and basically breaks up with him.
She says like, you don't pay any attention. We just go to monster truck. Demolition derbies and stuff like that, and she just says
too obsessed with cars,
basically, which is a whole thing that comes back
a
load of times. And at this point is when I kind of thought, right, he's John Travolta, because he's very much doing that kind of thing. Then I thought, actually, he kind of looks more like Paul Walker. I know you haven't watched most of the many of the Fast and Furious things.
I can see where you're coming from with
he's kind of like a combination of the two,
but not as cool as either of them.
Not particularly, no. And then there's so he goes and tells Vince, right? So that's, like I said, there's a couple of bits.
I know.
He tells Vince that he broke up with.
Is this before the nerds?
Yeah. This is before, yeah. He tells. Maybe it's not. No. He walks away, and somehow already the 2 nerds have found out about it.
Sherman's asking Ellie to prom, and she's like, and then Mike.
She's very clearly like not in. That's very much like an 80s movie thing, like John. What's he? I'm gonna kick myself. 16 Candles and stuff like that. John Hughes film. 16 Candles, Breakfast Club. There's that kind of dynamic where the nerd person is in love, but then the hero, all that kind of thing.
But then it turns out Ellie is like this cool journalist, and she's like, she wants to interview Mike about his science project.
Yes, well, just about him in general, but specifically she asked him that. Yeah,
and he's like, no. And she was like, how's this for a headline?
Yeah,
Bimbo leaves Harlan in limbo. And I think I like actually put my hand to my forehead at that moment. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
If you don't like the cheesy lines, you're gonna hate all the Vinny lines that I've got written down.
Yeah, I probably did. And and he's like, fine, I'll do an interview. And she starts asking question, which then we get the first Star Wars reference, because she asked him
how many times
she saw
Jedi. Which I did. Jedi. I thought she said, how many times have you Jedi'd? And I was like, what does that mean? But then Sherman's like, you haven't seen Jedi?
Yeah.
And it's like, right, okay, because it's released like 2 years after, is it? Yeah.
And she's like, what do you like? And he's like, I like cars and cars, and I like Springsteen and dope. And it's like, well, he's a very fleshed out character, isn't he?
And we don't, other than the cars, none of those other things never come back.
Yeah, what do you do in your spare time? I work on cars. And it's like, this is your main character?
He's very one-dimensional. This is why I like Vinny so much, because although he was a rat bag and there was a lot wrong with him, which we'll get to in a second.
And a complete coward.
Well, no. I mean,
we'll get into it. But yeah, I'm just like, they're setting up this main character, and they're setting him up already to be like the most boring character.
Yeah. But I think, do you know what? Like, no insult to Paul Walker, but this is another reason why it kind of reminded me, because although he looks a bit like Paul Walker in the films I've seen him in, he's quite charismatic in a very can't act very well way. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't do, it's like a bit like Ryan Gosling in a lot of films. Like he's quite understated.
Ryan Gosling can act.
Yeah, I know. But if you think about a lot of the films he's like known for, I mean, Drive.
I think like, a comparison would be
like subtle to the point where you almost.
A comparison could be Keanu Reeves, who's when he's asked to act, he doesn't do it very well. But if he's given the right role,
Keanu.
Does, like Matrix, John Wick, like he does really good
To be fair, though, I rewatched The Matrix early this week, and there's some very cringeworthy bits. With
It's the same with John Wick, like especially the second or third one. Anytime Keanu Reeves is asked to talk, it sounds really shit. But also Keanu Reeves in Dracula, one of the worst performances I've ever seen.
But so then he goes to tell Vinny, does he? Or there's a bit where they're working in a shop.
Yeah, they're
and it's the first real introduction of Vinny. And he
this
says
is
something.
This is what I've written. Vinny is so over the top. Like,
he says something like, he was like, "Oh, she broke up with you? I would have given her one of these." And then he goes, and does like a punch. And I'm like, what? Are you saying he would have beaten her up?
Yeah, and it's not the only time in the film he threatens violence towards women either.
It's okay, yeah. So I got to preface exactly what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with. He says there's some very homophobic stuff. He says at least twice in the film, but
he's a shitman.
He was the only character that said anything interesting in terms of I've got at least 15 lines written down throughout this film, which I thought were so funny.
Yeah,
it's like Jamal from last week's episode. Like
Jamal wasn't a dick though.
No, but Jamal, it was these out of context comedic lines that maybe weren't supposed to be comedic. They're supposed to be a bit over the top and like maybe verging on like stereotypical for the character, but just they became the most memorable things to me almost throughout the film. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, anyway. Oh no, and that's when he says, "Why can't women be like cars?" And while I was watching that, Amy was in the other room and she overheard that, and I could just hear her laughing.
Yeah.
And this is when he drops the first F-bomb of the film, and I don't mean fuck.
Oh,
I don't know in what context, but I've just written it. I think I was too shocked to.
Yeah, like he's written. He's purposely written as kind of one of those kind of like Italian American Boston, no, not like Brooklyn, kind of guys, but in the context specifically, he's so out of place.
That's what.
Not only is he out of place, he then doubles up on it.
Yes.
So like he's more Italian Brooklyn than when you see films set in Brooklyn.
Absolutely, yeah. And
like, have you seen the film Brooklyn?
No, but
obviously full of Italian Americans in that, and they're kind of like that typical, almost like Joey Tribbiani kind of guy.
Yeah, there's a.
And it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's what you expect. But he's that times two.
Yeah.
Completely out of setting, and it's just like, fuck off.
It's jarring, especially considering they're definitely somewhere in the lower south of America of the United States, because there's desert.
Yeah, I imagine they're in California or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're in like Southern California. And this guy is completely out of place. And there's not even any mention of, I think he mentions Brooklyn a couple of times, but it's not like, oh, Vinny's the guy who transferred a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's just there.
He's just there. Also, like the some of the older characters have like really Southern accents, like the dad and the new stepmom, who we meet a little bit later. She's got like this Southern drawl. It's just full of really strange characters.
It's all. It could even be a case that Vinny's not even from Brooklyn. He's just like doing it. He's putting on a persona. But yeah, and like as you said, nobody ever calls him out for being like a dick. And him and Harlan are like, apart from their interest in cars, are pretty different people.
Yeah. He seems to. He's kind of going and hooking up with girls and stuff, and Harlan's kind of just keeping his head down. I mean, he says he likes, what do you say? He's like smoking dope or something, but you don't see any of that like, really, do you? But yeah, and then there's the little ploy from Ellie, isn't there?
Yeah, so she's
Sawyer,
it's like I think it's like a school car park or something where her car stopped working right at the entrance.
Yeah,
there's a big traffic jam behind, and Harlan pulls up next to her, and she's like, "Oh, come fix my engine," and it's like the carburetor or something's come loose.
Yeah, he says basically the cap doesn't come off on its own, so she's done some sabotage to get his attention.
Yeah, and she basically says to him like, "I don't want to be voted senior class spinster."
Right, yeah.
So can you go out on a date for me so people don't think that I'm just like some loser?
Yeah.
And he's kind of umming and ahhing, and then he sees Crystal, his ex, in a car with a new guy, and he's like, "Okay. Be outside at 8."
And the thing is, it's like, it seems like it's set up for a whole plot. You know, you see it in like, I can't remember which film it is, but some like 90s film, which is like a copy of My Fair Lady or whatever, where like the popular kid like makes the nerd girl like popular or something. And it seems like it's set up for that. And then it doesn't really get addressed
also,
again.
The problem with this is that like we never see her out of context of talking to Mike.
No.
So we don't know that she's this bully,
We don't see
unpopular girl.
We don't see anyone, but even see Vinny bullying her would be a good thing or something like that.
Also, we don't even see Harlan as a popular guy.
No, it's almost, you know what? It's almost like there's only those characters in the school and there's no one else.
It's almost as if like these two are completely two outsiders. And it's like,
I hadn't really thought about it like that.
It's shown as like, oh, the really nerdy girl asking out the popular guy. But we're not really shown either of those things, that she's a really unpopular person asking out a popular person. It's just two people that already know each other, and one's asking out the other.
Yeah, they both seem like social outcasts anyway, don't they? Especially because later on, Mike, is being targeted by like bullies. What seemed like the jock guys. Yeah, strange.
And it's like, like they've set it up because they're like, oh, it's a classic trope,
but they've almost missed out some of the.
They've missed the entire setup of the trope.
Interesting, yeah. I hadn't really thought about that.
We're only like 15 minutes.
I know. We're gonna have to move. We're gonna have to move through this. Anyway, he gets back home. He's got his dog there called Skipper or something like that.
And
it's like classic 80s
dad's
movie
got a new girlfriend that he hasn't met called Dolores.
And they're like making out, and then she's
like feeding him chicken,
and she's like, "Hello there, I am your new stepmother."
Yeah, it's almost like she watched Gone with the Wind and was like, "I want to be like that."
And the dad doesn't even know what she does for a job, and it's like an awkward introduction. And then Mike calls her the wrong name as like maybe a spiteful thing.
Yeah.
And then he's like,
it's really awkward.
It's really awkward because they're almost like making out on the sofa when he comes in, and they're both like in their like 50s. So it's a bit of like an awkward situation for him and everything. And then he's like, I've got to go out, like, because doesn't he say stay and have some food or something? And he's like, I'm going on my date.
But also, he's like, come have some takeaway. But the dog is there eating the takeaway, and it's like they've got like KFC or something.
It's like they don't care like about him that much.
He clearly wasn't bought for him.
It's that it portrays him as like almost like a neglectful kind of.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of Danny DeVito in Matilda. That kind of, but
not
slimy,
quite as horrible. Like,
he
seems quite positive.
You don't see him much.
He's
just kind of a bit of a slimy, inconsiderate guy. And Harlan leaves with the dog.
He leaves the dog there.
No, he says, "Come on, Skip." Goes with the dog, and then like we don't really see the dog.
Oh, okay. So he leaves it in the room, doesn't he? Because he sneaks out.
Oh yeah. I know that's later on.
Right? Anyway, he goes. He's suddenly on this date, which is apparently then.
He picks up Ellie outside hers at 8.
Yes.
And decides to take her to a junkyard,
which turns out to be an old military testing grounds.
Yeah, well, it seems like,
but it's not. It's a military junkyard, like a boneyard thing. It's not actually a.
Used to be a testing ground, and then has become
right. Okay, yeah.
And she's like, "Why am I here?" And he's like, "I need something for my science project." And it's like,
okay,
fucking do
something. Just ask her to help you with it. Like, she's got this whole thing about fungus and UV light or something. She says,
and also, like, I know the teacher said it, but like, he could just build an engine, bring it in, and get like a C.
Or he could do like a slight variation on that, which I guess is kind of what he's going for here. He's maybe going to get an old plane engine and do that or something. But
he works in a garage. He doesn't need to go to a junkyard.
Yeah, a weirdly stocked garage with lots of things that come up later in the plot.
Yeah.
And then he falls through, doesn't he?
Falls in a hole.
Which is like an old bunker.
Yeah, it's like a fallout shelter.
From, I imagine, 1957 or whatever it is.
There's lots of like lizards and snakes around.
Yes.
Because it's been left for a while.
And Ellie's just like on the top, just looking down.
Yeah,
like,
and there's one guard, this massive junkyard.
It's like this fat old guy with a dog. And it keeps going to him, walking around as if it keeps looking like the dog's going to catch the scent.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't. It's only when they make a big noise later that the dog catches on.
And so Mike's like looking around this like room that he's fallen into.
Yeah,
and finds like a thing that's like no unauthorized personnel may open this without just cause or whatever.
Yeah.
And he opens it, and there's this like glowing thing.
Yeah, you can't really. You can see the glow before he opens the thing, and that's what draws his attention to it.
And it turns out it's kind of like what are those balls?
Yeah,
called?
like a plasma ball.
A plasma ball,
where you touch the globe and the lightning.
It's
goes
kind of that in the middle with 2 bits stuck on either side.
Yeah, it does look a bit like an engine, which is what it kind of turns out to be. A mixture between like an engine and maybe some sort of like futuristic gun, but without the handles, like a bazooka kind of thing.
And
this big glowing
it
thing
sucks
in the
the
middle.
electricity out of his torch, the flashlight he's got.
So he's like, Ellie, throw me down the big one.
Yeah, and it does the
same
thing again,
happens,
because obviously.
But to us, it's obvious.
But there's also at this point, right? It really pissed me off because I'm like, so they 30 years before they've had this alien spaceship,
right? Yeah,
they've taken a bit out of it and taken it apart, and they're like, aliens exist.
Yeah.
This little engine would be in like Area 51.
Well, that's the thing. Because
why the fuck is it just in some junkyard?
There's not anything that sets it. I mean, it gets set off by the things that they do, but it wasn't like it was dormant and it turned on.
No,
it was already glowing down there, and they feed it electricity throughout the film by mistake. Yeah. You know, the torches are the start of that, and eventually it becomes this whole thing. But if it was in a lab being tested by a scientist, they would have noted the fact that it sucks the electricity out of anything nearby, and they probably would have done something.
It wouldn't be left in a junkyard. It would be like at the end of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's put in a box in a storage room, never to be seen again. Like, especially this is Cold War America. Yeah, they're just going to leave like a super powerful device in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly as we talked about in the Stargate episode. This kind of thing would have been absolutely perfect for even for sabotage. Drop it on a warship and it would suck the power out. You know, drop it in a submarine.
This would not, and like I could never get over this the rest of the film. It's
I didn't even think about this at all.
Why the fuck
I was just along for the ride.
Their excuse is that it's got the door and it says no unauthorized personnel, as if that's ever stopped anyone. No. And what if it's like a Soviet spy that's heard about this?
Yeah.
And specifically goes to get it, like.
And it's guarded by like one old man.
Like we have Area 51 is a real thing. Like we don't know what's in there, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
Where they keep top secret stuff. This would be in Area 51. Especially considering
is this supposed to be Area 51 there where they are?
But no, it's just a junkyard. It's just a junkyard with one like fat guard.
Also, Area 51's right out, like fully out. Because they're like 5 miles away or something, they say later.
Yeah, but it's like, why is this here? But the reason it's there is for the plot of the film to happen.
Find it,
like it immediately I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, like come on, you need to be smarter than this.
There's so he's doing while Mike is doing all this bit, looking around in there. Ellie's up the top and she's getting more and more freaked out because either he's not replying or something happened.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where an owl makes a noise and she starts freaking out, and it made me think, who would get freaked out by owls? And it made me think of times when we've been walking back from places in the dark, and just at that point when it is pitch black and you hear a bird noise off in the distance, it is actually the scariest thing. But yeah, then
there's a rat.
Or maybe that was before. But yeah, then there's a rat, that makes her scream, and she runs and jumps up on like an old wreckage. And is that just as he's getting out, or is that...
He hears her scream and then climbs up.
And grabs the thing, chucks it out.
And he's like, what are you doing? And then they hear like a guard being like, hey, who's out there?
Yeah, because the sound of her screaming or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, one line that did make me laugh. He's like, come down. And she's like, no, there's rats down there. And he's like, you know what's worse than rats? And she's like, what? Jail. And it's like, you're right. Jail is worse than rats.
And also, there might be rats in jail. Yeah. So you got a double.
And then they run off through
through the junkyard, easily outrun the guy, get in the car, put the thing in, start driving, and partway through the drive, the electricity very predictably gets sucked out of the car.
And they're sitting there in the car and they're like, oh, why is the car stopped? And like the thing is clearly glowing, it's lighting up their faces, And they're like, what could it be?
And there's like electricity like effects around on the car.
And it's like, are
and
you intentionally dumb?
Yeah, and especially as this is the third time it's happened to Harlan as well, to Mike.
It's like, he's clearly not this great scientist because he's clearly a moron.
And then he makes this whole thing, which comes back later, where Ellie's like, oh, let's walk into town.
Yeah,
it's 5
we're
miles.
not too far away.
And he's like, no, I've got such a reputation as a car genius. I can't possibly walk into town. Everyone will know that I'm bad with cars. Yeah. So he's like, right, we'll call Vinny. And Vinny's it looks like he's having sex in the back of the car.
He's fucking some like 80s girl, like big
yeah, she looks
hair.
like Boy George. She's got like this crazy hair.
Although it's definitely not Boy George. We know how Vinny would feel about that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Couple of F-bombs there from Vinny.
Yeah.
And he convinces this girl that he's like, we're going, my partner.
What happens?
No, yeah, a truck
A truck comes up and he's like, can I borrow your radio?
Mike borrows a radio.
Does it have channel 18? And then on channel 18 is Vinny's
Vinny
car.
happens to be on channel 18. It's the emergency signal for them, I guess.
Yeah.
He calls Vinny out of his makeout session. They start driving, and there's a weird bit where a car's beeping them, and Vinny's like, fuck you, basically. Presses a button, and a middle finger, a neon middle finger pops out the back of his car, and points at the car behind him.
It's almost like LED lights just coming out of the boot or the trunk.
Yeah.
And just like middle finger in the car behind. And it's like, for fuck's sake. Like, of course he's got that. Like, so his character.
And at this point, I think this is about almost half an hour into the film, and I've written not enough alien stuff. Because at this point, if you think about Back to the Future, there's been at least, they've traveled back in time at this point.
We're not halfway, because I wrote
down. No, because this is probably about a third of the way. It's a half an hour, sorry, yeah. And then he does like, is he pushing his car or something?
Yes.
It's not really clear because he's not towing it.
Like, basically, like, Mike takes it off like handbrake and stuff, and he's just driven into the back and it's pushing him along. But like, how does he go around corners and stuff? Like,
I don't know.
That doesn't work at all.
And also, if you're getting really nitpicky with it, the alien device is in the trunk of Mike's car, which is right next to the engine block and the battery of the front of Vinny's car. So really, they should both be.
If you think that Mike's
engine,
sucked out, if you think Mike's engine is in the front of his car,
if it can go that far,
it's about the same distance to Mike's engine as Vinny's engine.
Less, I think. Yeah, probably. Yeah,
but
it depends if it's front or back.
The plot doesn't work for that, so we'll just ignore because this. A glowy gizmo has got incredibly inconsistent powers constantly throughout the film.
Absolutely. And then we get Sherman, who is in the bushes watching this unfold.
With a huge flashing light.
With a radar on his head, which I imagine is some sort of listening device.
He's basically like watching Ellie and Mike's day because he fancies Ellie.
Yeah, he's waiting for Ellie to come home, I think.
And he's hiding. I'm doing it with...
He's got big binoculars... And he's got a giant radar that's about like half a meter across, strapped to his head, that I think is like swinging and flashing. Or
flashing
like
red
that.
light. And I've written like, how the hell have they not seen him?
It's like, what's that stoplight doing? In
anyone could see him.
And he's like, well. Like at this point, he's like this evil, scheming, nerdy guy.
Yeah, because he's made a deal with the bullies.
And the bullies, who we've never seen before, all just show up out of the bush and they're like, haha, Sherman. And then they go, oh, so,
Mike
I was going to call him Danny Zuko then, but that's Greece. Old Danny Zuko who can't fix a car. Basically, they're like, Mike, they see that Mike's broken down.
It's basically a win-win because the nerd... Sherman wants Mike to be knocked down too because he fancies Ellie.
Yeah.
The bullies, for whatever reasons, never explained, don't like Mike and want to attack him.
And they say they call... for some reason, this is another thing that got me confused about Vinny's identity, is because he's wearing a Native American headdress when he's making out in the car, and then they call him Tonto, which is like the Native American in Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Famously played by Johnny Depp, who is
definitely
part of Native American, apparently. So they call him. So it made me think: is he supposed to be some sort of Native American, Italian American, Jewish character? Like, where's it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they make a deal, which is all cut in that very short scene.
Yeah.
There. And then it cuts to when I think I started liking Vinny more because he's sitting in typewriter class. which was a thing, smoking a cigar and reading an X-Men comic.
Oh yeah, no. Before that, it's got Mike and me trying to fix the car, but I've got nothing written down on that. And then it's that they're in typewriter class, which obviously an 80s thing. Yeah.
Oh no. Then it goes to him polishing. I've got
after the typewriter class.
Yeah, after the typewriter class. It's like a close-up of Mike polishing this thing.
Like really sensually.
And it's really essentially, and the purpose of it, as we find out, is, I mean, he's polishing it to use it as a science project.
It's much cleaner than it was anyway.
Yeah, and because the globe thing originally in the middle, the plasma
it's completely dusty.
At one point, it's so dusty, it just looks like a pinky red glowing orb. And when it's dusted off, it's just a plasma ball. Like you can see the lightning coming and stuff. And the reason why we see this close up is because then he presses a button accidentally, like an indentation, and a little wing pops out, and then he does the other side, and another wing pops out, and he basically turns it on, and these kind of rooms,
like twist turn, other bits open.
And I think this is supposed to be our example of him having this mechanical genius brain. It's like monkey go boop, like
he's touched something's open, so he's touched something there, and something else is open, like.
And then they have this discussion about it, and Mike says, "What does it run on?" And Vinny goes, "Unleaded, maybe premium." Like completely genuinely, not even as a joke.
Yeah.
And then the machine is going bigger and bigger on. It's kind of like it's glowing and stuff, and it blows up his radio.
Breaks the radio.
And Vinny goes, "Holy smoke, my box! That pisses me off."
See, that's what I mean. You clearly enjoyed these lines.
I loved it.
And you know what? Fair play. If you enjoyed these lines, but the whole time I was just like, for fuck's sake.
I think we went in at different points there.
Yeah. This character is so poorly written.
Like I said, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Bloody hell.
About 13 more of these. So.
And every one of those lines, I was just like, for fuck's sake, Vinny.
And then,
they get a car battery.
They get a car battery, connect it up, it powers it up more, and it starts doing these wavy Ghostbusters lines. And they kind of sometimes they seem to touch onto the people. Yeah. Sometimes they just go.
We're not really sure what they're doing.
The way it works is incredibly unclear. I mean, even in like the realms of like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, there's some attempts at explanation. What they talk about what they talk about in this is like Bob, when he encounters it shortly late, like he just has this information. I don't know if he gets it from another dimension. Yeah. He starts spouting stuff in this crate anyway.
But it basically
it creates
a vase, like an Egyptian vase, which now just thinking about it, considering later on in the movie, they probably didn't create it. It took it from history.
Yeah, because it seems like, although they say Egyptian vase, it looks like an ancient Greek vase.
Yeah, because
so I think Vinny is just
I don't expect the writer of this film to know the difference between Egypt and Greece.
Yes. And then there's a very dramatic unplugging where they're like, who's going to unplug it? And then Mike just like smashes it with his hand to like he smashes the plug out.
Yeah.
And it unplugs. And then
they're like, oh, let's hide it, and they hide it
away.
They hide the base
leave,
away,
and then everyone's leaving school, and they're looking, going, "What's going
on?"
No,
before that, as they're leaving, there's a massive axe in the wall in the garage.
Is there?
Did you not spot that?
I didn't see it.
They hide the stuff and walk out the door, and the camera pans up it, and it's the axe we see later on in the film.
Right.
Somehow.
Oh, it's like almost like a futuristic axe.
Yeah,
is it?
and it's stuck in the wall above the door, but neither of them have noticed it. And then they walk out, and I was like, "Ooh!"
But they walk out, and then they realise that somehow it's
2 hours.
It's 2 hours, and Vinny goes, "Stay tuned. We went 2 hours into the future."
Yeah.
Another good line from Vinny.
Yeah.
So they go to the library to find the answers.
Honestly, I think you've put more effort into writing these lines than the guy who wrote these lines did.
Oh, there's a good one coming up here. They go to the library with Sherman, and Sherman's the librarian, I imagine. He's like a student librarian.
Other nerd.
The nerd guy, the one who's made this deal against them, the one who fancies Ellie.
It was also at that point where I was like, oh my God, he looks exactly like Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah, he does look quite.
From X-Men.
From X-Men, when he's being Hank in Beast in the first
And throughout the rest of the film, I was like, he's Nicholas Hoult, like 30
but
years
he's
earlier.
another character who he's a bit unhinged at this point, and he's a bit obsessed.
Yeah.
He becomes just really like he becomes batshit insane along with one of the other characters. But
they've gone to him to kind of find a book on what it can be.
They're doing the classic, like, my friend had this happen to me. They're like, we're looking for a book about two guys who were in a room with an alien machine, and then they went in the future 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that sounds like a time travel. And they're like, that is what happened to us. I mean, that's what sounds like it happened to us.
It's like,
and at one point he says to Sherman, sayonara, dick nose.
Yeah, like, then Sherman finds this book about, like, time and space warp.
Yes.
And goes on this really kind of maniacal, like...
He says something, he finishes with, boom, you're all cosmic dust.
And then does, like, a crazy laugh.
Yeah, and I've written he's definitely mad.
Yeah. So their next...
Well, before that, though, quickly, when they're talking about what happened, about things appearing and disappearing, they say, the Sherman says, what, disappeared like magic? And Vinny says, like you, Palm Slime, if you flap your fish lips again. It's like...
It doesn't even make any sense.
They went double on everything, just like you said. It's like half of that. Like, oh, yeah, like you, Palm Slime, would be weird, but it would be fine. Or, oh, like you, if you flash your fish lips again. But it's too much in every sentence.
Yeah.
It's like they turn the knob up to double.
Every time.
Every time.
Every time.
And it's everything he says, which is why I've written down so much.
Which is why, like, I found that character so annoying.
But the writing itself is quite bad in general, because they go outside and they try and get Bob's attention as he's leaving for the day. And he's annoyed at them because they missed his class because they time traveled. And he says to them, unless your project is Dino Supreme, you both get D's.
Oh, yeah.
And then he says a load of other things and says, can you dig it? Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yeah, and then they arrange with Bob for him to see it later. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to be marking papers at 9:00 tonight at the school.
He's going home, I guess, for dinner, and then he's going to come back.
Just take the stuff with you. Do it at home.
I know.
Whatever. And then this
is the stepmother bit. So we go back and there's the stepmother. Yeah, he goes back home briefly, and this is when he sneaks out and leaves the dog. So he goes back home.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a bit before that. I can't remember. Oh, no, they go to the phone bits.
Oh, yeah.
And Vinny just, like, grabs this guy.
No, because Mike says to him, so there's, like, 3 phone...
booths.
What are they called? Like payphones.
Payphones, yeah.
And he says, oh, I need to call Ellie. Can you give me some change? Have you got any change? Yeah, and then what does Vinny do?
Vinny, like, grabs the guy that's on the phone. He's like, give me your money. And then, like, throws him in the bush behind. And then grabs the phone and is like, sorry, he had to go for a wee. And puts the phone down.
I think he says, like, after school tax. So it's like him being a proper bully.
And I was like,
which we should have seen him do to... when we see it a bit with Sherman, because he keeps calling Sherman fat.
Yeah.
Even though Sherman is not fat, it's Vinny, you are very, very skinny. Yeah. Everyone is fat to you. Like,
but like, I've literally just wrote down random bullying because
it's very, very,
and even like,
because he full on, like, it's like a jackass stunt. He, like, do you know when you get shoved and you fly into something?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so then
he calls Ellie to ask her out again.
Yeah, and he says he's basically like, we're going to bring the gizmo to Bob and tell him what's going on.
Yeah, come along, because, you know, why not?
Because apparently our dates are all weird science
I don't really understand why he wanted Ellie to be there, other than that. I mean,
she was there from the start, so I guess it's like following on with
but she was only there because he felt obliged to do her a favour.
And also that whole date thing. I thought it was a date to the homecoming or the prom.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a date before, so that she's been on a date.
Yeah.
But no one was there to see it. So it doesn't mean... And he's not the kind of person... Do you know what I mean? If he was captain of the football team, then them going out on a date would have got round. But he's like a weird loser. She's a weird loser.
If Sherman and the jocks weren't in the bush watching, nobody would have known they were on a date.
Exactly. I think maybe she probably imagined going to the milkshake parlor or whatever.
But
and
he doesn't even really see it as a date because he takes her to the junkyard.
No.
Which is why I don't get why he called her again, because...
And also why she comes on another one, because she's clearly a bit upset at the start because she wanted to go on a real date, because she actually does like him as well. Like it's very clear from that first ploy
very clear
that she is like head over heels for him.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't noticed her. As he says later, it's like, oh, we've been in class for 4 years and why have we never spoken?
Yeah.
And it's like, because you have had your head under a bonnet the whole time, basically. But not an actual bonnet on your head.
A car bonnet.
A baby's bonnet.
Then Mike gets home again and Dolores has redecorated the house.
But this doesn't make sense either. So I thought they travelled further ahead in time, because in the time since we last saw her, like the night before, they've gone to Reno and got married.
No, they haven't got married.
No, they said... Did they not say, wow, we shouldn't have gone to Reno and got married?
Really?
I thought they'd got married already, which is why there was like, she'd moved in and there was so much stuff there. I might have got that wrong.
Yeah.
Because he says your new stepmother, as if...
Yeah, I think it was just because they were like, oh, we're together now.
Right, okay. So I thought it was like a time travel thing at the time, which obviously never comes back up, because the only time they actually travel in time is those 2 hours.
Yeah.
And... yeah, anyway. Yeah.
Well, this is the point as well that I've written down. We are halfway in, and this is incredibly boring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like I can't put into words how boring this first 45 minutes was, considering the stuff we've been talking about. But we've been talking about like the main bits over 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it was. Even at this point, I paused the film, went for a piss, got myself some food, because I was like, I don't care about what's happening.
Yeah, no, to be perfectly honest, and I hadn't remembered this until you said, it was around this point that I paused it, and then I was on my phone, and then I went to the toilet, and then I had a drink, and I came back. I think
this was the first time since we've started the podcast where I was like, for fuck's sake, why am I doing this?
As much as I enjoyed the film in ways, and I'm focusing on the positives here, as much as I enjoyed those parts, I think the watching experience wasn't great. And the fact now that I'm looking at the fact that I took I think 20-minute, half an hour break in the middle, I think both helped my enjoyment for the second half, because I was refreshed. I had my interval, and also speaks a lot about the quality of the film.
See, I took like a 5 or 10 minute break, and I remember being like, I was like on my phone on like Reddit and stuff, and I was like, right, let's carry on watching the film, and it was literally like, for fuck's sake, but it was like, I have to do this for the podcast. It's the first time I'm like, I felt forced to do something because of the podcast, and I was like,
well, it's the first of many.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, back to Mike home. He goes to his room
and then sneaks out immediately.
His dad's like, you gotta come out and socialise, stop being so rude to Dolores. And the dog is watching some dogs on TV.
Yeah. It was quite cute. And then he leaves and goes back to the school, and then we suddenly cut to the bullies in Star Wars masks.
Yeah, 2 of them have got stormtrooper helmets. One of them's got a Darth Vader helmet. And like, how
did they get away with that?
Right? Like,
it's not long after.
And like, this is made by Disney. Obviously, it was Lucasfilm that owned Star Wars at the time.
Yeah.
This is 2 years after the Return of the Jedi, and George Lucas has always been really on merchandise and stuff. And this is the second Star Wars reference.
I think costuming, if it's in if the characters are clearly wearing a costume, I think there's license for it, because there's a lot. If you think about sitcoms and you think about comedies, especially when it's taking the piss a bit, you do. If you think about like if someone goes to a convention or something, you see stormtroopers and stuff, and you see. I think it's in The Simpsons when it's a flashback and Homer's just watched. Empire Strikes Back, and he spoils it for everyone in the crowd. Like everyone's wearing. Do you know what I mean? That was pre-Disney purchase.
Yeah, I just feel like it's kind of seemed like.
I mean, it's clearly like it's a attention grabbing bait thing.
Yeah,
it's exactly. Like, remember Star Wars? This is the second or third time we mentioned it.
Like that came out 2 years ago and was like the biggest franchise ever.
Yes, everyone remembers that. Yes,
yeah.
And we still remember it, and it's almost 35, 36 years later, is it?
Yeah. And it's like, yes, Star Wars is a thing. It almost seems like they're trying to jump on the back of Star Wars.
And basically, the reason why they're wearing the mask is because while Mike has driven up to the school and gone in to see Bob with the engine thing, they have put the masks on because they're putting cream and flour
they don't
on
put
the
cream
car.
on yet. They put it when he gets to the school.
But that's what I mean. But that's why they've got the masks on. They're in the school already.
Oh yeah, at this point, he drives to the school. Yeah.
So that's why they're wearing the mask. But we don't see that immediately, I don't think. So it's just this weird shot of them like sneaking around a school, going like, "Haha, I wonder what Mike's up to." It's like, you guys are really obsessed with Mike.
Let's go kill the Rebel Alliance. Yeah. So that they go to meet Bob, who's marking papers.
Yeah. And
he brings it in. He's like, look at this. And he's like, what is it? And he kind of does a demonstration where he plugs like a little battery onto it. It kind of glows a bit. And then Bob's like, oh, what metal is this? And gets like a metal identifier.
Yeah, like
thing.
an ionic thing. It does the element that it tells you
and
what
he kind of tests it. And it's like my machine must be broken.
It's like, this isn't a metal that from our world.
And it's like, it's older than Earth. And then and then they're like, oh, what can it do? I know. Then they attach the battery. Sorry, after they test it.
That's right. I think because what he does is he does the opening the wings bit.
Yeah.
And then the lights go on, and there's like these kind of alien runes kind of thing on the top that glow when you switch it on. So it's quite impressive at first, and then they plug it into a battery, and some stuff starts happening.
It starts going. It melts the metal identifier thing.
Bob says that it's psychedelic, which I thought made him the second best character afterwards.
He also quickly concludes that it's alien.
Yes, and at some point in this, I think they plug it into a car battery and it starts melting the car battery, and then they plug it in. Bob goes a bit. So this is a testament to the writing. Bob goes insane immediately.
I've written Bob is mad.
Yeah, I mean and I don't know how much of this is supposed to be, I don't know if I'm thinking into this, but an anti-drug message, because he's been seen very much as this like ex-drug guy.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he gets the chance to have some outer space psychedelic experience, he risks everyone's lives. And he plugs the thing into the mains. And then he starts going bigger and he's absolutely mad.
And then he's sucked into...
Oh, actually, sorry. I've got a couple of mini quotes here before you go.
Oh, yeah.
So when it starts glowing, he says, "I've seen lights like this at an Ozzy Osbourne concert."
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
God, and then when the battery gets melted, he says, whoa, it slimed out the battery.
Yeah. This is also the second time in the film where Vinny's like, connect it. And he's like, whoa, I'm not doing that. You do that.
And then Bob's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
He plugs it in and seemingly is possessed. And you think maybe, I don't know about you, I thought at this point, maybe he's going to become the villain. Some sort of Ghostbusters thing, possession.
Maybe.
Because he's kind of waving his arms around. And he's doing a lot of arm waving
like
acting.
A crazy man.
And he seemingly has this knowledge of this thing. And he's saying it's a time-space vortex. It's gonna bring stuff through, and he's waving his arms, and I just couldn't stop imagining him without the special effects. And he's literally just doing some sort of almost like the waving inflatable men. Yeah. He's just waving it around.
Oscar nominee Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he gets like what I can only describe as red skulled out of there. He goes straight up into the sky like this. There, as if he's been teleported out in some way.
Yeah. So the other thing with this bit that like kind of made me stop and think was that like we've now seen this gizmo turn on twice. First time it created this vase which probably came from the past and an axe and put them 2 hours in the future.
Yeah.
This time doesn't create anything. Sucks Bob. They don't travel in time.
We don't know, but probably not, because it's given more power this time.
Yeah.
And yet it's still the evening.
It seems like that 2 hour time jump earlier in the film.
Yeah,
it's completely
That's
random.
what I was thinking, because I hadn't really thought about that until we were talking about it, a few minutes ago. There's no indication other than when they first turn it on both times. I think there's a bit of a pulse that goes out.
Yeah.
And kind of, you kind of see it envelope like the people in the room a little bit, but they don't react really other than seeing it. I imagine that's what that is. But
surely they'll either go forward in time or they don't.
Yeah, and it seems like neither happened this time.
Yeah.
And I imagine maybe, it's got a life of its own. It's almost a sentient thing in some way. But the annoying thing is if you bring it down to where it's supposed to be from, it's supposed to be some sort of alien transport thing.
Yeah.
So are they extra dimensional beings and they're coming, or they're time travelers? Maybe they're from the future.
After it finished, I was trying to think about like how this alien race and spaceship would have worked, and I kind of concluded that the less you think about the aliens, the better.
I think it's, as you said before, with the Egyptian vase. I don't think the writers gave it that much thought, or the writer, as it were.
Yeah, I think it was just like, let's have this cool device that can do this random stuff and not really think about why or where it came from. But yeah, anyway, whilst they're doing this...
So Bob, this is when the car...
Yeah, so the bullies are covering Mike's car in like cream or something.
Cream and flour, I think it is.
Yeah, and...
they run out because they're running away from what's happened to Bob initially.
Yeah, but
and there's a bit of a lack of explanation.
The warp.
Because basically what starts happening is it travels through whatever it is. It's like an electrical wave. It travels through the pylons. And it's going out of or going to another town or something.
I think it's never explained because this is my science project where they don't need to explain anything.
They just start driving, basically.
I think it's going to like the power generator that powers the city.
Yeah, and we think it's effectively going to suck stuff from that because, as Sherman explained before, if a rift or a vortex or whatever gets too big, it will destroy everything.
So they jump in his cream-covered car.
Yeah, so they scare the bullies off. They drive. And this is a bit that you see in the trailer where they're just gunning it down this highway. And the thing is, it feels very much like a Back to the Future getting to 80 miles per hour thing. But I don't know how it could be unless that was a leak from... Do you know what I mean?
I reckon, because... I think when I watched,
he press his button, open the engines, go
when
fast.
When I watched, what was it? The movies that made us.
Yeah.
One of the things they were talking about was how to create the time machine in Back to the Future, because I think it was originally like a fridge or something.
Yeah.
And then they made the decision to make it a DeLorean. He's got 88 miles per hour.
Yeah.
But I think by that point they talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different studios about how to make this work. Okay. So it might be that it got passed down and they're talking about this, but it's not even...
I'm just really surprised that with his motor head knowledge and the fact that this thing is an engine, that they never put it in the car.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It would have made so much sense. Oh, my science project, I'll put this engine in my car. And then they travel, and that's, I know it's a complete rip-off, but some people might have preferred that to Back to the Future, because maybe it's a bit more raunchy. Do you know what I mean? It's such a half-hearted effort at a thing.
That's the thing. I think a problem I always had is that they've got this device.
Yeah.
And they never decide how it works or what to use it for.
No.
The only thing they ever plan on using it for is showing it at the science project.
Yeah.
Apart from that, they're just like, oh, it's just here.
Absolutely, and they don't even talk about...
Which, as you said, is mad, the fact that he's so into engines and he's got this, like...
And it's shaped like an engine block. Like, it's literally shaped like...
But anyway, they're racing the electricity along the pylons.
And but they stop off quickly at Mike's dad's garage, and in his lockbox that says, like, do not open, there's a load of dynamite in there. Because apparently a mechanic has, like, literally, like a 2 meter by 2 meter red... lockbox, which seems to be full of dynamite, because they get out like 30 sticks of dynamite. And then when they're driving, Vinny is like taping them. You don't really see it, but he's taping them into like these long string kind of things.
Which at one point, I think I read as part of trivia that on the original poster, one of the posters had a picture of Vinny with a cigar, the dynamite, and like a gun. And all 3 of those got removed.
It's the Blu-ray, I think, now.
The Blu-ray.
They've taken it out recently.
Yeah, so they're racing along, and
when Mike presses the button to go faster, Vinny goes, "Now we're talking hyperspace."
Yeah, he does.
Another Star Wars reference, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. And then they get far enough ahead that they get to a pylon and they start attaching dynamite to it.
Yes.
At this point, I was like, how the fuck is Ellie so on board with this?
I know, because they're literally performing like domestic terrorism at this point.
They'll blow. Because the plan is, if they blow up the pylon, they take all the electricity out of their town.
Yeah, I mean that's the case, but also it's so that it doesn't get wherever it's going.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, the stakes aren't set in that scene because they don't say Ellie, the smart one, should go, we can't let it get to the main power source because it will blow up the world.
Yeah.
No one says that. They all just start driving in cars and grabbing dynamite.
Yeah.
Even to the point where I've written, right, is their plan to blow the thing up? Because I thought they went to get the dynamite to go back to the school to blow it up. There's missing pieces which make this so much less coherent, you know?
And the missing pieces aren't because of editing. It's because they weren't written in the first place.
It's clearly written stuff because it's quite despite the fact that we both had breaks in the middle, it's only an hour and a half film.
Yeah.
It's, I think Back to the Future is longer, I imagine. I think Back to the Future is probably closer to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just because it packs so much stuff in.
Have you got it there?
It is. I don't know where it is on IMDb. Yeah, an hour and 56. Yeah. So Back to the Future.
It's only 20 minutes.
It's
difference.
20 minutes extra, but those 20 minutes are potentially the
like
extra parts that this film needed, and the extra entertainment factor, which unfortunately. This
then the dynamite doesn't work. Mike goes out and does it.
It does work to stop it spreading.
Oh, no. I mean, when they first
set it off. Yes.
And then Mike attached it to his car or something. Big explosion. Everyone's fine.
The explosion is absolutely massive, and it's clearly done with real.
Vinny and Ellie are hiding behind the car.
Yeah.
Mike is standing in front of the car, setting it off, and there's this massive explosion. And he is fine.
He's just absolutely fine.
Why is he fine? He'd be dead.
And then they drive back to the school. And by that point, because of, I imagine, the electricity and the sparking and the what turns out to be, well, no, it's not quite yet, but there's effects going on at this point.
Yeah.
Vinny says, because basically the police have all turned up, he says...
Yeah, they get to the school and there's people being arrested outside the school.
He says, how do we get the gizmo out the high school and past the fuzzballs?
Yeah.
And then Mike drives Ellie back to her house.
First, he goes and drops Vinny off.
First.
Then he drops Ellie
and Vinny's
off.
just got a beer in the car. I don't know where he got it from.
Well, earlier in the film, when they go on Mike and Ellie go on their first date, Mike grabs a beer. And I think he's seen drinking it at one point in the car on the date. Maybe it's that same beer.
He's just seen like
the next day.
No, it's all still the same night though.
No, it's the next day because...
No, you're right, yes. I saw a bit of trivia and I thought this wasn't right, so I didn't write it down.
About how it's
mostly set in one night.
After their first day...
Then it's all one night.
Because the next day...
So don't write that in trivia.
From when they...
It's 2 days is the answer.
From like the vase until the end of the film is all set on that same day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then like Mike and Ellie kiss outside her house.
Yes.
And they go on this. Then it's when like, oh, how come we never spoke to each other in 4 years? And she's like, oh, God, you spent 4 years under a car bonnet. I spent 4 years in books. And Mike goes, oh, well, maybe I like cars because I've always had problems trusting people and I trust cars. And the whole time it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, none of what you're saying is built from any of the character development in this film.
No, this is the character development dump part.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And then
we
they kiss
haven't
again.
seen, I mean, you can put the pieces together that, his mum's not there, maybe trusting people, girlfriend dumped him. It does...
but none of it is said.
In theory add up, but it's not set up at all.
We have absolutely no idea what Mike's like social standing is, how popular he is, how many friends he's got.
No,
how any of that.
He's going out with a girl who seems quite unpleasant at the start, but maybe he's been quite unpleasant to her.
Yeah, for all we know, like his mum's dead. She may have divorced and left home. Maybe he spends his weekends with his mum, but the film's set over 2 days, so we just don't see her.
Absolutely.
So we don't know any of that relationship. We don't know what his relationship with Crystal was like. We don't know his friendship group. So his whole, I don't trust people is like, just put in there for like
it's
just
to excuse the poor character effectively.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, for fuck, like you can't just expect us to go on board with all this character development an hour into the film. Like you can't just say this and expect us to believe it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you thought about this more than I did, clearly.
I just like, there was moments in this film that annoyed me. Like,
headphones have fallen off.
I didn't go into this thinking I'm gonna be ranting every 5 minutes about this film.
I thought this was gonna be a breezy episode, and yet we are almost at an hour and a half, and we haven't got to any of the interesting parts yet.
Anyway, right, so let's move on.
He climbs back in through the window.
He goes home again,
and we see the dog is still watching
dog
TV. But there's someone smoking there who he doesn't seem to notice.
Some guy who's just sitting in the dark
and
in
it's
his room.
Detective Jack Nolte or something like that.
Yeah, because apparently detectives just sit in the dark and wait for people to get home.
Yeah, so he's sitting in there, and then as he starts confronting Mike about what he's been up to or whatever, then the dad and policeman all come in the bedroom.
And the dad and Dolores are just in the towels.
So why were they so on board with this weird surprise trap thing? Because they would have let him in there, let him shut the door, turn the lights off, and sit there waiting for their young teenage son.
Yeah,
very strange.
Right, at first I thought he snuck in there, but the fact there's another policeman,
and they're all like, "This is Jack Nolte. We know him really well." It's like, what the fuck?
And why are they in towels? They're like, oh yeah, you go into our son's bedroom and sit in the dark. We're gonna go hop in the shower.
Then, what's the stepmom called?
Dolores.
Then she's like, "I'll sort this out." It's like, how long is this been going on for?
Because Mike's like, "Oh, where's your like warrant or whatever?" And Dolores is like, "Yeah, what are you doing here?" It's like, you let him in.
It seems like what's happened is they've busted in, and Jack Nolte's been like, "Right, first thing I need to do, just leave me alone. I'm going to go in the bedroom, sit on the bed, start smoking a cigar, and turn the light off."
But we have no idea how long he's there.
It seems like he's either been in there for hours or for minutes.
Yeah.
And then I don't know which one is worse in that case.
But basically, he arrests him.
Yeah, the boys get taken to the station.
But it's in connection to the disappearance of Bob Roberts, which is weird.
We also hear something on the radio, I think, when they're driving back about the explosion.
Yeah.
Because you see like power maintenance people.
But they don't ask about that. They ask about Bob Roberts, which is weird because he wouldn't have been.
They do mention missing dynamite at some point, though. Yeah.
They wouldn't have mentioned Bob Roberts disappearing because he was marking stuff at the school.
Like an hour, unless the time travel thing happens.
But they never say that. So
you know what they should have done? Oh, yeah, we went forward a week into the future.
Yeah.
It's still 9 p.m., but it's the future. So you've all been missing for a week, and Bob Roberts' car has been there. So you're now in trouble.
Yeah.
Boom.
But, like, for all they know, Bob Roberts has finished his marking, gone home and gone to bed. And there's nothing to suggest otherwise.
As he's leaving his room before he gets arrested, Mike is like, "I'm just going to get my jacket," and then grabs his phone and has a very obvious phone call with Ellie where he says, "Bring the gizmo."
I don't know at what point he got Ellie's phone number and how he memorized it, but let's have a look at that.
He tells to go get the gizmo and take it to the class again or something.
Yeah, so no. He wants them to take it to the police station. So they can be like
at the class, is it? Still?
Yeah, it's at the class. Yeah. He's like, "Ellie, go to school, grab the gizmo, bring it to the police station, because then we can explain."
She goes to get it, and Sherman is there, creepy Sherman, and he gets obsessed as the same as Bob. He goes weird.
But the thing is, he's like Bob. You could put it down to the gizmos turned on and making him mad. The gizmo's not powered up at this point, and the nerd is just a weird.
And he's like, "Oh, we better turn this on," and he does the same thing and plugs it into the mains.
Yeah, and he's like hiding behind a thing and jumps out at Ellie, and it's like, "Oh yeah, let's plug it in."
Very, very. Strange.
But then them plugging it in causes a big power outage and
it's
stuff.
Some sort of, and I don't really know why it's. First of all, why it's happened since they cut the power off.
Yeah.
And also, why it's now worse. Is it just because it's the third time and that's just the way these things work?
But it means they can escape from jail.
Because as they're escaping, but just before they're escaping for jail, Vinny's getting his photo taken.
I had a feeling you were going to bring this
up. And he's
up.
like, "Hey, is there something in my nose? Like, is it I got a booger?"
Yeah.
And then the female police officer's like, "Hey, kid, why'd you wear sunglasses at night?" And he goes, Because when you're cool, the sun shine on you 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Oh.
And then she like basically punches him, and then he calls her like a butch something and says, shave your mustache. Despite the fact that she's, well, it's not for me to say, but she doesn't look that butch to me. Is all I'll say.
Also, there's the bullies are at the police station
because they caused the. I think because they were maybe at the school when the police turned up.
I think they might be the ones getting arrested at the school.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, and then Vinny's like, "Let's jam," and then they run off. And then, despite the fact that Mike's car is there,
right? Yes. Why is his car there? Like. They got arrested from his house.
It's not even that. It's the fact that Vinny goes, I've always wanted to do this, and steals a police car.
Yeah. So, like, two things. Like, firstly, why is his car there? Like Mike didn't drive to the police station. He was arrested, right? So
unless the detective was like, let's go in your car. I'll chaperone you to the police station.
Are you saying like they arrested him? Is like, right, Mike, you take your car. We'll meet you there.
Like, don't you go off anywhere.
And then
we'll be following you.
And also, Vinny steals the police car. A police car is just like left unlocked outside the police station.
And as it turns out, has a shotgun.
Because nothing could ever go wrong from leaving a police car unlocked outside the police station.
1985. It's not.
It just seems like mad. When because we don't see Mike driving there. When they came out of the police station, I saw his car there. I literally went, "Are you fucking shitting me?"
You know what? I didn't even care too much about that. I was more dumbstruck by the fact that
Vinny could just get in a police car.
Vinny might want to do that, but there's a car there. You don't have to both be driving.
No,
it's such a macho thing. You both have to drive your own car.
But we don't ever see Vinny driving.
No, we do. He saves him from the thing.
Oh yeah, since that one bit.
But it's not. But they could have even set it up. I know this is nitpicking again, but they could have set it up where he's like, you know, earlier on, Mike offers to give him a lift, and he's like, "Oh, I don't let anyone drive me around. I always drive my own car."
Yeah.
And then maybe that would, you know, at least in a really faintly comedic way, you know, make this make sense. But it doesn't make any fucking sense.
And I feel like for the later plot points, the only stuff that really comes from him stealing police cars is the fact that he's got a shotgun, which then doesn't matter because they then pick up more guns in the school anyway.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have that shotgun for very long. Anyway.
Why does he take the police car? It's not for the plot. Most of the nonsense in this film is for the plot. That's not even for the plot. There's literally no reason for it. Anyway.
They get to the school,
and
there's a Ghostbusters cloud swirl, which I think could be almost copy and pasted from the finale of the first Ghostbusters. First Ghostbusters. And and then Sherman's coming out, and he's going, "Oh, Ellie's in the tower."
Yeah,
which makes you think maybe it's. I was getting a bit excited. I was thinking, you know, maybe it's like a fantasy thing. You know, maybe they've gone into like a weird Dungeons and Dragons thing. There's going to be some sort of magical tower.
No,
it's just part of the school. It's just like she's at the top of the school, and we see her passed out, and we see like skeletons.
Before
and
that, it cut. He's like, "Oh, there's an explosion! I had to get out of there." And they're like, "Where is she?" And he's like, "They're still in the lab." And then it cuts, and it's just a skeleton on the floor. And I was like, "Holy fuck!"
That's what I mean.
Has Ellie just been like vaporized?
And then it moves across, and then there's a girl lying there.
And she's unconscious. It was like, "Oh, that's fucking cheap."
But that's what made me think tower and skeletons. I was thinking, what the hell is this doing? And then this is when Vinny
grabs the shotgun out of the piece.
If I'm going to end up in another dimension like Bobberino, I'm going in packing. And then he's like,
yeah.
Love it.
And then they go through the school and there's like ghost people from different times.
And I think Sherman's explaining it as, he says it's a crossroads of time and space.
Yeah.
And we see different figures.
We see it, but it's like ghosts at this point. So you see like a World War I soldier. You see like maybe like Cleopatra.
And I think I mentioned it in the trailer. There's two Nazi or look like SS soldiers, and one of them is very clearly Asian, which is, you know, if anyone knows anything about
the SS or Nazis,
probably not someone that would be like.
Yeah,
and then Cleopatra is like being a bit flirty with Vinny and throws him a flower, and he's just like completely smitten with her.
Yeah, he's gonna like go follow her. And I'm sure you've got a line here.
And Sherman goes, "You can't do that," and he goes, "Oh, these are optical delusions, like ghosts, so it's sort of cool."
Yeah.
What is this?
See, that's like my reaction to every one of his lines in this film. Like,
I've got so many in this.
So then a Neanderthal.
Yeah, which I thought was Bigfoot, and I was like, cool.
It looks like Bigfoot. Kind of looks more like just a gorilla, but It's a Neanderthal.
I actually saw a thing this morning about Neanderthals,
Yeah.
and apparently the specimens that we originally found were like very. They had lots of physical deformities, so actually the hunchback look isn't actually representative of them, and they were actually much more upright, and they almost looked similar to us, just with the bigger foreheads.
It kind of makes sense because like humans and Neanderthals did interbreed for like 1,000 years,
which is why a big population have some percentage of Neanderthals.
Like Neanderthals didn't die out; they were kind of bred out. More and more were just fucking humans.
So they fight him. And Vinny goes, Barney Rubble just tried to flame me out.
Yeah. And then they go down a bit and they see like
a gladiator
and a gladiator.
This is one of Vinny's not so good lines. Where this gladiator is just stabbing someone to death. And Vinny says, scope that F word in the tutu. And I've written, yikes.
Yeah.
And then he says something in Latin, which is something along the lines of those who die. It's the classic.
Yeah, salute those who are about to kill you or something like that. And then Mike has a fight with this Roman gladiator
they all
who has a sword.
Sherman gets a bit cut on the arm, but it ends up just him and Mike grappling, doesn't it?
Yeah. Somehow, Mike takes the sword off this Roman gladiator and kills him.
Buff-ass dude.
Who we've just seen kill a guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's holding the guy like in the air against the wall, and he's stabbing him in the guts. And somehow Mike, in like a scuffle on the ground, manages to turn his sword on him,
and stab him. And I'm like, how the fuck has Mike managed to? Beat a Roman gladiator?
They all have crazy combat skills in this next section. I mean, Sherman kind of explains it because he talks later on about how he's read about guns.
But still.
And he gives apparently what's too nerdy of an explanation because Vinny's like, what did he just say? And he's like, he said to eject the mag, put it in, pull back the thing. It's Vinny, you're dumb as shit. Anyway, and then
they go to a next bit, and then it's the Viet Cong.
So just before you continue, if you didn't picture it already, effectively what's happening here is they're walking between different high school rooms that have each been transformed into different kind of dioramas or whatever. Each of them's a different set. So the gladiator one, there's like a bit of a Roman wall on like a school
like the edge of a like fighting ring sort of thing.
Yeah. And the next bit they go in and there's like a crashed helicopter and like some trees and stuff. And then there's loads of Viet Cong people. And do you know what Vinny says here? He says, "Hey, exchange students."
Is that racist?
I think it might be, but
I
wrote it down.
Seeing Asian people and assume that like exchange students, like America does have Asian Americans.
Yeah, it's 85. It's like at least like a couple of generations. There'd be lots of third, fourth generation Asians.
At this point, I realized I was like, this is their big part of the film where they're going to be showing various different time zones
moving through the ages.
I could not care less. Like,
see, I was quite on board. Really.
Usually, if you told me, we'll see Roman, I went to the others.
Yeah, because there's one that I thought you'd quite like, but were you not that bothered?
Romans, Viet Cong, Cleopatra. I'd be like, that's pretty cool. But I think the way they do it, I just didn't care.
It's like a TV show in a lot of ways, isn't it? It's like a Doctor Who kind of.
And then they have a skirmish with the Viet Cong and somehow disarm them.
They beat them all up,
kill them all, shoot them all,
steal their guns, and they like free the American soldiers who are like, "Thanks, bud," and like run off.
Yeah, because
why not? Because they can't afford to have extra characters in because they haven't written any dialogue for them because they've barely written the dialogue for these characters here.
Yeah.
By the way, Sherman is with them and he's friends with them now.
Yeah. Because when they bumped into him outside, they decided to drag him in with them.
Yeah, because he needs to show them where to go, despite the fact that they know where the thing is because they left it.
They put it there, yeah.
Sherman, this is when he says about how to use guns from books, and Vinny's dumbfounded despite the fact that he's spoken
it's
quite
literally
clear
he says like take out the empty mag, put a fresh one in.
I think
he
uses slightly more technical terms.
I don't know anything about guns and I knew what he meant.
Yeah, also like it's America, like
everyone has guns.
Are you saying that both of those guys have no knowledge of an automatic weapon?
Vinny, would not surprise me if he's got a load of guns. Just shooting all those.
What are you trying to say?
I just imagine Vinny shooting all the gays and Asians at the weekend because that seems like what you do.
Well, they now see a load of which I thought was aliens, but apparently Sherman says aliens. They're mutants from after the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So apparently Sherman knows it's going to be an apocalypse. Yeah. They shoot them all, despite the fact that they have laser weapons.
Yeah.
And they're these weird kind of. They just look shit, basically.
Yeah, and then they go into a big room.
Well, Vinny calls Sherman fat again, despite the fact he's very average size.
Yeah.
They go into a room and then
Sherman finds a plant and he's like, "This is 60 million years old." And immediately,
how the fuck does he know that by sight?
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, I see where this is going," and I don't want to, because then
it wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Half the wall is missing.
It kind of just fades away into a landscape, doesn't it?
And there's a T-Rex there standing just outside the room.
Yeah, it kind of walks in.
But it's less Jurassic Park T-Rex and more classic upright.
It's much
tail
more
dragging.
It's like
T-Rex.
I couldn't tell whether it was puppet or stop motion because some of the scenes, it looks like they're.
I think it's a mix of both.
It looks like they're very much in the foreground and it's in the background, like the original King Kong films or Journey to the Center of the Earth. It feels like that. And as usual, Vinny has something to say. He says, "It's God fucking Zilla," which I don't think you probably appreciated there. I thought the dinosaur effects were quite good.
So at first, I was like, "It looks kind of shit," and then I rubbed it out. So I was like, "Actually, it doesn't look terrible."
If you think 1985, if you think Jurassic Park's a good 8 years off, probably 9 years considering when they would have made the effects.
The T-Rex doesn't look terrible. I'll give it that, except its hand when it picks up Vinny.
It manages to, so basically, this is why I was saying Vinny isn't necessarily a coward. I think he's a homophobe and he's a bigot.
The coward stuff was the fact that he never wants to touch the thing. He's always like, "No, you do it."
This is
you do it.
Well, if that's the case, this is when he proves himself, because despite the fact they're all hiding quite adequately, Sherman sneezes because of his allergies, and, because nerds have allergies.
The T-Rex apparently sounds like a tiger for some reason.
You know what I thought was so weird? Because this is pre-Jurassic Park, there's not any consensus of how a T-Rex should sound.
So they just recorded a tiger.
So it just sounds like a roar. And it's like how iconic the Godzilla roar is, even if you do a variation on it, if you're doing a knockoff. Nowadays, most T-Rexes have some variation on the Jurassic Park roar.
Which the Jurassic Park is like a mix of like a lion, a tortoise,
like a seal
slowed down a seal. Whereas they've literally, and it's not like the roar.
It's like...
And the roar doesn't come when the T-Rex doesn't open its mouth or anything. It's just standing there normally, and you hear a tiger roar.
Open mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then Vinny has enough of this and jumps out with his M16 and just starts blasting this thing.
Yeah.
And he's just going mad on it. And then this hand, who, as we all know, T-Rexes have, what is it called?
Tiny arms.
There's a word for like a limb that's not useful, but picks him up.
And I thought at this
point, I was thinking, oh my God, Vinny's going to get eaten. This would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it'd be great if he gets eaten. But it's like a massive arm.
It's like...
And the effects look terrible at that bit.
It's like a weird... It's a soft crane.
Generally, the special effects are decent in this film.
Well...
That bit of him picking up Vinny is awful.
Come to it at the end. Do you know anything about the special effects in this? No, okay. We'll come back to it again. But, and then so while that's happening, Sherman then passes out. And Michael finishes the job and shoots the T-Rex.
No, but first, I think Sherman and Mike start shooting it with a machine gun for ages. And I shoot it for ages, and I was like, I know T-Rexes are T-Rexes, but I don't think they're bulletproof.
No, they would have hard skin, but not...
But they're shooting an entire magazine. And this is the other thing that
comes up shortly after. I think I've actually got it here. And how much ammo do they have? Because... they must have picked... because even the fact that Sherman, when he's demonstrating, ejects a clip and puts another one in, says that they've got more than one. And then later on, you see that Vince has bullet belts around him,
imagine
like bandoliers.
Took them from the Viet Cong people, but
still,
you know, yeah, like, and even the T-Rex is like mouth open at some point. You're telling me not a single bullet went in there?
That's exactly what I was thinking. It keeps showing this close up, probably because they're quite proud of the puppetry work.
Yeah,
but the first thing that I don't know about you, that I would think with this, if you can't get through the skin, look for a soft bit,
shoot in the
eyes
mouth.
or mouth, and it's constantly opening its mouth. Shoot it in the mouth,
roof of the mouth, straight into the brain, dead. But then he gets a shotgun and shoots it into the gut and immediately kills over.
Right, so there's a bit here that I was a bit confused about. He does that. T-Rex falls over. Vinny's missing for about a minute and a half because he don't know where he is. He's behind the dinosaur. It's fine.
Sherman's also missing.
Sherman's missing because he fell over.
From the moment they walk into the school, there's just like a foot of fog.
What?
Across the entire
What's going on with the dinosaur's stomach? Because it's on fire and it looks like there's a campfire and a cave inside it.
Oh,
and I was thinking,
I thought it was just a big glowing hole.
It's really big, and it must be the ribs, but it looks like a campfire was inside his stomach. And I was suddenly thinking it was like another dimensional thing, and it was going to turn into like a cave, and cavemen were going to come out. Because Michael is just staring at it for a while, like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, anyway, he grabs his mates. They run off to the next bit.
I've written down at this point, bullets don't harm a T-Rex. A shotgun in the gut does, though.
Apparently, because they're so different. Like, it's just not...
But then he can't find Sherman, who's laying in the fog. As I said, that's just laying on the floor.
The fog.
It's like a smoke, like when like bands play on stage.
It's like
smoke.
dry ice. Yeah. But it is dry ice, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Vinny's like injured behind. At first, I thought the T-Rex had landed on him.
Yeah, because he got dropped while. He's like,
he's fine.
My back.
And then they leave, and Sherman takes this opportunity to shoot down the scoreboard in the school gym.
So there's the visitor and home, and he shoots the visitor bit off.
And he's like, haha, yeah.
As if he's got like some sort of school pride, despite being the reject and the not sports guy.
Yeah. I thought it might be that he's shooting it as like a fuck you to the sports team.
But he shoots off the visitor part.
Yeah.
But this is when
Either way.
This is another bit where he's like, he's manically laughing.
Yeah.
He's insane.
Yeah. And like, yeah.
Yeah. And then they go into the room that they were looking for the whole time.
First, the mutants are back again. And
the mutants start shooting as they're running out. They go into the room they were looking for.
They can find the lab.
Shut the door. Ellie's just under a massive pile of stuff. There's like a bookcase. There's loads of shit just on her.
Yeah. They spot her. Mike goes and grabs her. And then they grab her and they're like, right, let's go. And I'm like, no. This whole time you've made the whole reason they're at the school is to go and grab the gizmo and to turn it off. Yeah. Right?
He says, can you walk? And she's like, yes.
Let's go.
Also, despite the fact that she's been passed out for an hour or so now.
And then they get there. They finally get to the thing they're trying to do.
They didn't make any attempt to...
And then they grab Ellie and they're like, let's go.
Well, as it turns out, he does go back almost immediately.
But at that point,
it does
I'm like, are you ignoring the whole reason why you're here? What's your plan here?
And I don't know if you noticed, but in true high school film fashion, her glasses have now fallen off. So she's now hot now. Despite the fact that she looks almost exactly the same. I mean, they tried to give her the worst possible glasses that are about
cover half her face,
about a foot wide.
But yeah, it turns out, no, she's attractive.
Now she's attractive. And and then there's the mutants are banging on the door, and Sherman goes, "Who is it?"
Yeah, and then they shoot the door, don't they? With their machine guns.
They shoot the door while Mike is going back to the gizmo, and while he's going back,
he then remembers why they're there.
Yeah, and this is a really anticlimactic ending because he goes over to it. He makes a couple of attempts. It keeps going back to Ellie, who's struggling with Vinny, trying to. Let me go with him. Why? What would you? If your boyfriend was defusing a bomb, would you want to run over so you could stand next to him while he blew up?
And the thing is, like, Mike's probably like, no, let me focus on this and do this.
Yeah.
What help are you gonna be?
Anyway.
It's
and then he's
dumb character decision number 500.
He's kind of being shocked and he's like crawling.
Yeah.
And then he manages to unplug it or turn it off with his special his button presses that only he knows. And then
he disappears for about 10 seconds.
And we think, wow, he's gone. And I was thinking, right, maybe sequel bait or something, because you can imagine like Journey into the void or whatever.
Yeah, and then he reappears.
And he
like 10
reappears
seconds
just
later.
lying on the floor, and then has a hug and a kiss with Ellie. And then Vinny goes, "Hey, Mikey, this is no time for romance. Scaramouche, let's go." And then they leave.
Yeah.
And then
Bob...
Vinny and Sherman are friends, and they make that classic, "Oh, you ain't so bad after all."
All right.
And he's like, I think he says something like, "You ain't so bad for a fat virgin," or something like that. And he's like, "You ain't so bad for a greaseball monkey boy," or something like that. And they're friends. And then Bob, Dennis Hopper, runs out from the
and he's dressed like his character from Easy Rider.
He is. He's dressed in the same gear from almost 20 years before. Mustache, fringe, tasseled suede. And
he basically says he's been to Woodstock, so he's time traveled back.
He's
in the
been
past,
into the 60s,
relived the 60s, been to Woodstock, and then come back and gets arrested.
The cop says, so yeah, this cop Jack Nolte, who we thought maybe was going to be some sort of antagonist, he turns up again for the second time in the film and says, Where the hell have you been? And he says, Woodstock, oinker.
Yeah, he's like, who are you? And he's like, Roberts, like Esquire, and it's like, what?
And then Michael goes back and leaves the gizmo where he found it.
He goes back to the junkyard. I thought, you know what? It's a super, super safe place for this ridiculously overpowered
Bob
device.
Says no one should have this or something. Despite the fact you think, because Bob's mad and loves the 60s, maybe he would want to have it.
He'd want it. Yeah, he's like, no, we should have this. So
Bob gets arrested. Mike takes it back
because
to the
they've got
place.
this really, really super powerful engine that could cause unknown damage, and they found it by tripping over it in a junkyard. The best place to keep it is in a junkyard because nobody will ever find it again there.
That old man and his dog are going to do a really good job.
And they literally like drop it in, pull like the floor up, the door, and just leave it there. He doesn't even cover it up. It's just a door on the floor, a trap door.
And then we have a really, really artistic role reversal scene where they're driving back, Ellie and Mike, and guess what happens? The car stops, and Mike looks and he's going, "What could have caused it? I'm such I forgot to fill up with gas." And then he says, "Oh, we're only 5 miles out. We could walk." And then Ellie says, "Oh, but what will everyone think of you and your car machine skills?" And he says, "It doesn't matter. It's just a car." And then the credits roll. And we get a classic 80s song film song, My Science Project by The Tubes.
I've written down worst theme tune ever.
I listened back to it afterwards almost twice.
Yeah, I imagine we've got different feelings about it. I imagine it's come from like a year earlier where you've got Ghostbusters, which is one of the most iconic theme tunes of all time.
And even Huey Lewis and the News doing practically the whole soundtrack, which I've got on vinyl for Back to the Future.
Yeah.
The difference with those, I think, is that, I mean, Ghostbusters is obviously about the film, that big theme. Huey Lewis's songs, they fit with the film, but they're not. This is called My Science Project,
which is why I compare it more to Ghostbusters. But also, it has, who's the fucking guy that does Ghostbusters theme tune? Ray. Oh fucking hell! How much?
Ray isn't Ray one of the Ghostbusters?
Yeah. How much do you want to blank on this? Because like it's that guy that everyone knows.
I just googled it and it came up with Fall Out Boy. Ray Parker Jr.
Ray Parker Jr.
Ray,
and like Ray Parker Jr. is somebody like.
Yeah, I mean the Tubes. I don't know anything about them.
No, and it is like, go listen to it if you're listening to this. Go listen to it.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. There's at least a couple of
absolutely fucking shite.
I would say it's a very average 80s song.
And they keep singing about My Science Project.
But there's lines like, Einstein knew his stuff, and then you go and do your science project. It's like it's that with the San Francisco
and like the credits has just got like random like cut scenes of them doing random things.
And scenes that we didn't see of like Vinny being a bully in school and stuff, which would have kind of filled in some of the bits that we mentioned.
And it's got a bit of Vinny at the police station and just random bits.
It ends with his mugshot, and he's like, "Hey," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. How about a little bit of trivia to lighten the mood?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned all.
We've got
bits
quite
of
a
trivia
lot. So I've got the stuff about Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, Time Busters in Sweden.
Yeah.
Puppets. Oh, this is what I was going to say. So special effects legend Rick Baker, who you might know from Star Wars. He did a lot of the stuff on that.
Yeah.
He also won 11 Oscars for best makeup, including American Werewolf in London. He was a consultant on the film's effects, I think specifically the T-Rex. So there was someone with knowledge involved, but I think the term consultant is
very loose,
and could even amount to a phone call. Really, he wasn't paid for it, I'm sure.
Yeah,
or if he was paid,
I would say like the special effects
up on the day
are probably the best part of this film because they are passable.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the real problem I've got with it, other than everything else we've mentioned, is just it's the pacing and the decision to keep everything in that third act. What they should have done, and I know we do a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas on here, but the first time it's activated, even with the torch, have a time thing happen. Have a small dinosaur pop out and he has to fight it then. I know that's potentially special effects, but you know what I mean? Every time it's activated, have a time thing happen. Have something seep out so they have constant interesting stuff to deal with. Maybe even the reason they go there is because lightning hits it and a warrior comes out. Do you know what I mean?
It's not hard to make this a better film.
There's all the house of the haunted house situation where they're walking through the different rooms, very similar to what we discussed with Monster Project as well. That whole thing would have been better if that was like a greatest hits of stuff that had already happened in the film. Have everyone turn up, have Cleopatra even be like a new girl at the school and Vinny fancies her, and it's really obvious that she's Cleopatra, but maybe Vinny doesn't realize. I mean, I don't know how you could fit Nazis in, but do you know what I mean? Layer it throughout the film because it's all back-ended, and we were both I know I enjoyed it more, but we were both bored by the time the interesting stuff happened.
That's the thing about this film, is that like I've ranted about various different parts of this film that I hated, but I think the biggest crime this film commits is that it's incredibly boring. Like
and it doesn't have any right to be with
the general idea.
Matter.
It's easy to we've got this space engine that brings people back from the past and is causing this trouble. Like it shouldn't be this boring. And like you get bad films and they're bad, but like some bad films can still be a bit insane. Like the Dinosaur Project was a bad film, but you still enjoyed it. This film was so incredibly boring that it didn't redeem itself whatsoever.
It's the same as if with the Dinosaur Project, we didn't see any dinosaurs until the last half an hour.
Yeah.
And you could make the comparisons with Monster Project where it kicks off for the last half an hour, but we've got teasers of monsters.
And it's set up for that.
And it's also the teasers of monsters. The first, when they're getting the interviews and stuff, is probably half an hour, 20 minutes in. Whereas with this, at half an hour, they've just got the engine and nothing that interesting happens for another 15, 20 minutes.
Like it's offensively boring.
Right. Well, last few bits of trivia and then we can do some ratings and move on to the final sections. You mentioned a couple of the cast's other credits. But I've got some what I've written as weird cast trivia here. So Danielle von Zernack, who is playing Ellie in this film, is she didn't do much acting after this, as you might have seen. But she happens to be married to James Fernley, who is the accordion player for the Pogues.
Huh. That is incredibly random.
Don't worry, I've got at least one more here. John Stockwell, who plays Michael. First of all, he was in John Carpenter's Christine in 1983, which is about a car that eats people. Which is quite funny because he's the mechanic in this, and it's actually referenced when he's working on a car at the start. Vinny mentions something about a car.
Oh, he does.
People.
He even references the film Christine.
Does he say the name? And he was in Top Gun, as you mentioned. And in 2005, he directed Into the Blue, which just happened to star Paul Walker.
Huh.
The last thing, though, is that John Stockwell is the uncle of Florence Welsh from Florence and the Machine, the British singer.
So like between the main couple in this film, one of them's related to Florence the Machine, the other one's related to the Pogues.
Yeah. So what we can say is that any kind of reunion would have an interesting soundtrack.
Could you imagine like a Pogues Florence the Machine mashup? Yeah.
Just weird, right? I'm glad I as you could probably tell from that trivia, there wasn't as much behind the scenes stuff.
No, I did look on IMDb and there wasn't really anything that stood out.
So I kind of did a bit more digging in the Wikipedia pages of the main cast. There's loads of stuff, you know, Dennis Hopper I won't go into, and even some of the other minor characters of the adults in the film, they did other things, but a lot of it's I think it's classic American stuff. It's not stuff that I've really seen. Or anything like that. So do you want to do some ratings? What did you
do you want to go first this time?
Let me have a little think quickly. I reckon it's hard to tell because so you can tell which bits I enjoyed. The stupid stuff, I liked Vinny. I think generally as a film, which I know isn't necessarily how we're rating these, I would rate it very lowly, like a 4, I think.
Yeah.
I think for my enjoyment, I think it'd be closer to like a 5-ish, but I'm gonna settle on the 4. I think it's a 4 that I enjoyed, probably because I was in a good mood when I watched it. Let's just say it that.
Okay. See, I was thinking, right, what redeemable qualities does this film have?
And you thought, oh, Vinny, all the good writing, all the special effects, the dinosaur.
And then I woke up from my coma and actually realised I'd watched my science project. The special effects are decent.
Yeah.
The basic
but they're
premise...
not original.
No. The basic premise is okay. Again, not original.
Yeah.
It made me just think that, like, you do have 0 out of 10 films who got that have everything wrong. And it's not that. Which made me think, like, it can't be a 0, obviously. But like, that's made me think, what has it got going for it? The cast isn't terrible; they're not great.
No.
So, and then just talking about today has kind of made me realise more than I thought. I think I'm going to go with a 2.
Okay. 2 out of 10.
A 2 out of 10. And I can't imagine us watching anything worse than this.
I will try my very best to find something. There's some I had my scopes on that could either be much better or much worse.
I mean, unless people like my suffering.
There's some really weird stuff. I won't get off on too much of a tangent because I'm aware that this is quite a long episode already. But there's some stuff where I found it on lists of films on these kind of IMDb variants. And I go to look them up and I can't find them anywhere. There's a Spanish horror film about a goblin. Well, Spanish language film. I'm not sure which country it was from. And it looked so strange. And there was a poster that it was an illustrated poster. It was almost like pornographic. Very strange, but it showed up alongside.
I think we said when we looked for film, we found some pornos. Oh yeah, and for
the Blair Witch Project, there are multiple pornographic.
Yeah.
Bear Witch Project. Erotic Witch Project.
I don't think we can review porn for this podcast.
I think the Bear Witch Project is at least marketed as a raunchy comedy. I imagine having lots of bear breasts involved. So I think that's probably the limit of what we can do. Maybe as a bonus add-on to the Blair Witch, which is coming at some point. But yeah, some of those. Anyway, I'll try my best to find one that you can review even worse.
So yeah, that's my side.
What was I for?
Yeah, and I said a 2.
I mean, that's vastly.
At some point, actually, I was going to say we should go back and keep track of these, but
it won't be hard.
Cares?
Someone can do it on the on the socials, on the subreddit.
Right.
So on to personal projects. I think maybe just do the one each this time, just to keep things a bit swifter. Anything you want to start with, Lewis?
So, as I mentioned last week, making my Godzilla model.
Oh yeah, of course.
I've made progress with that. You saw
Yeah,
the
I
legs.
did. I was gonna say I saw the legs on Friday evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, really impressed actually. Yeah,
nice. It's actually come off like way
nice
better than I expected.
Yeah, even without the paper mache molding over it.
Yeah.
Because of the interlinked nature, it kind of looks quite scaly already.
Yeah,
so
I think
quite
that
a good impression.
That quite works anyway. Because I'm gonna do stuff with the paper mache to make like scales and stuff. But yeah, I was making all the fingers this week, which was really kind of small and fiddly because it's basically the same approach as the legs of having a core like cross section and circling around.
Okay.
Because that's so small. And then like honestly, it's been stressful trying to figure out how to make fucking hands.
Yeah. Well, how to have like a central bit almost to stick.
Like so I had all the fingers and then I literally, it's the only time that since I started doing it, I've then like glued something and then ripped it back off.
Yeah.
And doing the hands, I literally did it like 5 times. I glued something. I was like, no, that I tried like doing like the back of the hand. It didn't work. Then tried connecting the index finger to the thumb, didn't work. Tried connecting it to the arm,
like
didn't
a solid
work.
Base almost.
And I've now figured out a way. So I've got like the 3 fingers, not including the thumb, and the hand stuck together.
Cool. Okay, cool.
And then I'm going to do the thumb on separately.
Nice. Cool.
But yeah, I've taken a couple of days off it because like
it gets a bit intense. Yeah.
It was literally when I was doing this hand stuff, I literally went to bed and like my mind was just like racing, like thinking about figuring out how to do the hand.
I know what you mean. I've been like that with projects before where you kind of get in a bit too deep with them.
Yeah.
Especially if it's all you've been doing for like a day or so.
Yeah.
It can be a bit hard to switch off.
I was trying to sleep, but obviously just thinking about, oh, maybe you could try this or do this. And I ended up just being like, nah, I need to just have a couple of days off on it. But
good. Well, I'm glad it's progressing at least because
still looking forward to seeing how it comes out because I'm quite happy with how it looks at the moment.
Nice.
Maybe when it's done, I'll stick it on one of our socials.
I was thinking that. Yeah, I mean, what would
if
be
I keep
great
talking about it?
If I'm sure it would have come up by now, but if there was some sort of Godzilla project thing,
there is a manga called Godzilla Project Mechagodzilla.
Right, okay.
But that's all there is. I did look into it.
We could do a mini episode where we both read it and we just talk about it.
Yeah.
Potentially at some point. And then I was thinking that might be a good way to, reveal it kind of thing, post it up on the thing.
I mean, based on my progress so far, it may be months and months until it's done.
It gives us more time to figure it out. So that's good.
Yeah, how about you?
Cool. Not much really. There was something I had in mind, but it slipped my mind when we started recording. The only thing I can think of is as I showed you just as we arrived, Lewis, I received a board game expansion, I suppose you call it. It's the Deadpool Unmatched expansion. If anyone's not heard of Unmatched, it's a series of board games from Restoration Games and Mondo, who do a lot of vinyl and posters and stuff.
Yeah.
It used to be. It's based on an old Star Wars fighting game, and they've redone it as figures from myth and legend, and then they've added in Jurassic Park.
You've got like a shit ton of
I mean, you can see up there, Lewis. I've got Jurassic Park, Robin Hood versus Bigfoot, Cobble and Fog, which is like Victorian stuff. The original one, King Arthur, and that. Bruce Lee, Little Red and Beowulf. And now Deadpool as well.
Yeah, it seems quite random in their selection.
It is,
but that kind of adds to it.
It's almost like Super Smash Brothers of like literature and culture. And I mean, now Marvel, they've announced, I think I sent you a little while ago, some it's more street level. It's like Daredevil and Ghost Rider and stuff like that. But I'm really excited for them. But they because of COVID, I think the production's really slowed down. So this Deadpool one, which I ordered, I think they did a Deadpool's Day. It's like April Fool's Day or something. So so the 1st of April was when I ordered this. It's taken quite a while to get here. But yeah, would like to try it out at some point. I think maybe even later tonight might give it a go.
Nice.
You still need to try it at some point.
Yeah, like we've been talking about this Unmatched for seemingly years now.
Yeah, I think it's been about a year, and it feels like, I'm sure it feels like a lot longer to you.
And like, yeah, well, mainly because Sam was always meshing me like, oh look, they've got this, they've got this, they've got this.
And it's like, I've never played this.
I see, I've never like we've tried to do it, but we've never, it's never come together that I've had the opportunity to play it.
I don't know why, really, because
we've played other stuff.
Yeah. I think it's never come together, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe with this Deadpool one, it will do.
Yeah,
we'll see. But yeah. So that's what I'll be doing, either today or tomorrow or whatever. So,
nice.
Anything else you want to add today?
I think that's that.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool.
I can now calm down and never have to think about my song
until you have to listen back to this episode.
I'll listen to it back and then do the socials and then never think about it ever again.
Well, speaking of socials, that's a nice little segue there.
Yeah.
If you do want to reach us with any positive affirmations for Lewis, make him feel better about his opinion. If you just want to make him feel better about himself in general, if you want to, harshly criticize us,
if you want to come back
opinion,
and tell me about how my science project is actually an 80s masterpiece,
if you've got anything like that,
don't
to tell
bother.
us.
no, do.
Please reach us via email at theprojectprojectpod@gmail.com. On Facebook and Instagram, you can reach us at theprojectprojectpod, and on Twitter, we are at thatprojectpod. And now, Lewis.
Yeah, we've now also set up a subreddit. It's the project.
Yeah.
It's just kind of posting the podcast and some clips at the moment. But hopefully, if we get a decent amount of people on there, we can create discussions and stuff on there.
Absolutely.
So get on there as well if you use Reddit.
That would be great. So via any of those mediums there, if you've got any suggestions for things. We recently on Twitter had a good suggestion for a film that we'd missed out on our list.
Yeah.
So that's got added there immediately. So we really do take them on board. So yeah, just let us know anything, comments, criticism, suggestions, very welcome, all of them. But unless you've got anything else, Lewis,
I think that's it.
I think that'll be it. So thank you for listening.
And good night.
And goodbye. Ciao, babe.